that the transcription is accurate. I'm slightly worried that I'm not really using my hands anymore. I don't handwrite. I don't type. What are we going to do with our hands?
Of course, you can use hands for many things. You can play tennis. You can play violin. You can cook.
Badly, but yes.
So our prediction is that we'll increasingly rely on voice to interact with AI, because voice is the most natural way for us to communicate. Typing is actually a skill we learned in later part of our life. When a baby started to communicate, the baby first used voice to communicate for many years before he or she start learning writing or typing, right? So writing and typing are harder skills to learn and to perfect. Unless you're a professional writer, most people are pretty bad at writing. They're also afraid of writing, but talking is much easier to do.
So do you think that this is the beginning of the end of writing and typing? I mean, might we forget how to do it?
It's possible. It's the same. If you think about it, I drive a Tesla for many years now. I use the full self-driving mode.
Yeah.
It can take me from my home garage to the garage at my office by itself. So my driving skills has been degrading.
Have they? You've noticed that?
Yeah, it's already happening.
Does it bother you?
I hate driving manually.
You don't like driving anymore?
I don't like driving anymore because I'm afraid that I may cause an accident.
So do you think the Tesla is better at driving than you are?
Exactly. It's already driving better than me because it's trained by millions of miles of driving data. The car has 8 cameras compared to 2 eyes I have.
But you don't need 8 cameras. Your 2 eyes are doing the job. You can have 10 driving lessons and get your driving license. You don't need all of that.
Eventually, you don't need that. So it's by the same way, AI can help you write way better. AI is a way better writer than 99% of the human beings generate.
But what happens to our brains if we're not training our brains in the way that we do when we learn to write and type, when we learn to drive? Is there a worry that we just won't be as sharp as we have had to be?
Not necessarily. When you speak, you are still using your brain, right? You're expressing yourself. You're thinking aloud, especially when you are discussing with your colleague. There could be 5 or 10 people. There's a lot of interaction happening. Ideas can be created by talking. Of course, if you like to write, you can still do it, but you don't have to do the tedious part, such as taking meeting notes.
Do you think Otter will still be going in 10, 20 years, or do you think it will be part of something else?
I think so. We're announcing a new platform called Conversational Knowledge Engine, which we think will capture as many conversations as possible, organize that in a platform so people can access that knowledge so that they can do their job better. And it also enables agents to help you with some of your workflows. So that's a huge market, and it will take another 10, 20 years to grow. People may stop writing, but people will never stop talking.
Will they ever stop having meetings?
No, they won't stop having meetings. People will still talk all the time. They need to communicate. They need to build human relationship. So if you think about that, how many conversations are happening in the world, it's just so huge.
Thank you for listening to the interview. You'll find more in-depth conversations on The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with Karim Bagheer, boss of Africa's biggest AI firm, the former Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, and the musical icon Ringo Starr. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview. Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. We are live in our CBC studio downtown for your Tuesday morning show at 3 minutes to 6 a.m. Thanks for joining us. You're on 89.3, 990 a.m. on the app and on YouTube. The team today, Mr. Abby Adiemi behind the controls who covers weather, Mr. Darren Marash, who's a producer of our YouTube stream, and good morning to Sierra Sanders, who's going to be covering your commute in, and Sierra also will be on the air talking about that. She's also directing the program. Weather-wise, I wish I had better news for you today, but really, Brandon and Winnipeg today only going to get to a high of 4 degrees. Chance of flurries this morning, just a slight chance. I saw a little bit of that out in Winnipeg. And in Winnipeg will be windier, though, than Brandon. Winds northwest 30 to 50. There are periods of light snow forecast today for up north in Thompson, and your high today will be 0. So that's what we're looking at. We start in Winnipeg mostly cloudy. We're -2 currently. Brandon is cloudy, and it's -1. And in Thompson, light snow and drifting snow already, and the temperature is -6. Heather Wells is in to start our morning with what's developing in our news center with her headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a longtime political studies expert says he has never seen such vitriol at the Manitoba legislature. University of Manitoba Professor Emeritus Paul Thomas says new rules instituted by the Speaker of the House yesterday show just how bad it's become. The Speaker, Tom Lindsay, adding 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist. We'll hear more from Paul Thomas coming up. And public school teachers need more support as they work with a growing number of students with complex needs. That is according to the Manitoba Teachers Society, who has done a survey. It says respondents, 81% of them, say class size, complexity, and a lack of supports are their main concerns. More Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Later on that story, we're going to build on it and talk to an education expert about students with complex needs, what they need, and what their teachers need to succeed in schools. So stay tuned. We'll hear more about that story. In addition, in the first hour of the show, speaking of schools, the University of Manitoba is hosting Manitoba's largest science and engineering festival coming up on the weekend. We'll hear all about it. So stay tuned. Right now, though, we turn our attention to national and international stories making news this morning. World Report's up at 6.
Today on Q.
Riz Ahmed is an award-winning actor known for pushing for more nuanced portrayals of South Asians on screen.
I can't hear you. You understand me? I can't. I'm deaf.
He'll be here to talk about reimagining Shakespeare's Hamlet and what it means to take on stories that weren't written with him in mind.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce Canada's next Governor-General later this morning. That person will replace Mary Simon, who's been in the role for about 5 years. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, this appointment is to Canada's highest office. What qualifications is Mark Carney looking for?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Canada's Prime Minister, many of his closest ministers and advisors, the opposition leaders, the Speaker, the Chief Justice, and of course the King himself, all men. So installing another woman in the corridors of power at Rideau Hall may be an important counterbalance. Mark Carney earlier this year said that the next Governor General would absolutely be bilingual, speaking both English and French well. This after years of official complaints and unofficial grumbling about the current vice-regal, Mary Simon, being picked despite not speaking French. But the skills and experiences necessary to inspire Canadians' respect go far beyond questions of identity. The right person must understand deeply the role of the Crown in Canada's constitutional monarchy, its special relationship with Indigenous peoples, its symbols and responsibilities, and in exceptional cases, potential power. This office must be seen as trusted, upholding the nation's best interest. And with potential sovereignty referendums on the horizon, and not just one but 2 provinces, someone capable of speaking with clarity about national unity.
There is a whole process involved in selecting a Governor General. Can you walk us through that, Janice?
Well, now that we know it's imminent, Mark Carney's audience with King Charles back on March 16th may have been his opportunity to discuss his recommendation in person and in confidence with Canada's sovereign. In the weeks since, Mary Simon's husband has been speaking publicly about the couple's future plans, so it isn't a surprise to see her 5-year tenure ending. That's about average for a term. The Prime Minister's office, though, has not said whether Carney's been working with an advisory committee to evaluate potential candidates. We'll see if we learn more about not only the pick, but the path that led him here as today goes on.
Janice McGregor is in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The Speaker of Manitoba's legislature is reining in what he considers bad behavior in the chamber. Tom Lindsay says MLAs are making disrespectful comments and often yelling at each other. As Karen Pauls reports, he's hoping the new rules will improve decorum.
Start a trend towards civility and respect.
Speaker Tom Lindsay opened the legislative session with that plea, but it didn't help. Here, a Conservative MLA tells Premier Wab Kinew,
quit drinking, Wab.
Last month, Conservative opposition leader Abi Khan was reprimanded for telling the health minister, who's the first Black, queer, gender non-conforming MLA, quote, "You're a terrible person, whatever you are."
Order, please. Order!
Lindsay says it has to stop.
I hope members will reflect on what the youth of Manitoba are learning from the behavior they witness in this House, and I would ask members to consider if they want this to be their legacy.
So, new rules. If MLAs get 4 warnings for heckling, they won't be allowed to speak in the session. And he's adding these to the list of unparliamentary words.
Bigot, homophobe, misogynist, racist, transphobe.
Conservative leader Khan commends Lindsay for taking this stand.
And that this language is always hurled from the government to our side. We're not the ones using these 5 words against them.
But Kinew has a different take.
Well, when something's racist, you got to call it out.
Paul Thomas hopes this will improve decorum in the legislature. He's a political scientist at the University of Manitoba.
We're already living in an era of deep mistrust of politicians, but the politicians bring it on themselves based on the behavior we've seen recently in the Manitoba legislature.
Thomas says change has to start at the top with the leaders. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The World Health Organization says it is possible Hanta virus is being transmitted from human to human on board that Dutch cruise ship off the coast of Cape Verde. But Maria Van Kerkhove says the situation is stabilizing.
At this stage, there are no additional symptomatic people on board. That said, the situation is being closely monitored, and as a precaution, passengers have been asked to remain in their cabins while disinfection and other public health measures are carried out.
Van Kerkhove says officials are now focused on medically evacuating 2 people to the Netherlands. There are 5 other confirmed or suspected cases of hantavirus. 3 people have died. 1 person remains in intensive care in South Africa. Another is showing only mild symptoms. The ship is anchored offshore with about 150 people on board. Officials in Cape Verde are refusing to let it dock, fearing the local population could be infected. The U.S.-Iran ceasefire appears to be on the verge of collapse. Both countries are still claiming control of the Strait of Hormuz, and both launched new attacks in the Persian Gulf on Monday. The CBC's Tom Perry is watching developments from Jerusalem. Tom, what is the state of this ceasefire?
I'd say it's shaky, but so far, for the most part, holding. We saw Iran target the United Arab Emirates yesterday. That was for the first time since this ceasefire began. The UAE says that its air defense is engaged with 19 missiles and drones. We saw a major fire, though, at an oil facility caused by a drone strike. The U.S. went after Iranian fast boats, those small, fast-moving vessels that have been used to attack large freighters and tankers. But that said, the U.S. has not resumed bombing Iran. So, as I say, the ceasefire, for the most part, is holding. We have heard from Iran now. The Speaker of the country's parliament posted a message on social media saying that the security of shipping and energy transit has been jeopardized by the U.S. and its allies. We've heard from Iran's foreign minister warning the U.S. and the UAE not to get dragged into what he calls a quagmire. And we heard from Donald Trump, who went on Fox News and said that Iran would be blown off the face of the earth. That's Donald Trump talking, if they targeted U.S. ships. Again, though, that hasn't happened yet. So for the most part, the ceasefire is holding despite what we've been seeing happening.
And the conflict in Lebanon has not abated. Israel is targeting Hezbollah. Can you tell us the latest on that front?
Yeah, the Israel Defense Forces have told people in 2 more towns in southern Lebanon to evacuate because they're going to be going after Hezbollah. The Lebanese Health Ministry says that 17 people were killed in Israeli strikes yesterday alone. So people are still dying. Keep in mind, it's Lebanon and Israel that have agreed to a ceasefire, but Israel, of course, has been fighting Hezbollah, and they didn't sign on to this deal. And so while there is a ceasefire, Israel is still keeping up its attacks against what it calls Hezbollah targets.
The CBC's Tom Perry in Jerusalem. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
In south-central China, an explosion at a fireworks factory has killed at least 26 people. More than 60 others are injured. The explosion was so powerful, it blew out the windows of nearby homes. An Ontario judge is expected to rule today in the case of a 12-year-old boy who died in the child welfare system. A couple is accused of first-degree murder in the death of the child who had been placed in their care. They're also accused of torturing and confining the boy's younger brother. The CBC's Jamie Strachan has more. A warning, some of these details may be disturbing to our listeners.
According to the Crown Attorney, 46-year-old Becky Hamber and her wife, 44-year-old Brandy Cooney, hated the 2 Indigenous boys they planned to adopt, allegedly torturing them, restricting access to food, and keeping them locked up for hours at a time, often wearing wetsuits zip-tied to their bodies. Erwin Ellman is Ontario's former child advocate.
How could this happen?
He says in this case, like other tragic cases of children dying while in care, there were warning signs. The court heard about numerous occasions when teachers, police, and doctors voiced concerns about the boys' treatment, but they both remained in the home.
In terms of power and control, power of the Children's Aid Society to say, we know best, nothing to see here, you don't understand our work, you don't understand our children.
In 2017, the brothers known as LL and JL were moved from a foster home in the Ottawa area to the couple's Burlington, Ontario home. 5 years later, according to testimony, 12-year-old LL died alone in the basement where he'd been locked up for hours. Cindy Blackstock, a longtime First Nations child advocate, says safeguards were clearly ignored.
It's just a horrendous outcome for, of course, the little boy who passed, but also for his brother.
Attorneys for the accused say the women did the best they could with the children, who one lawyer described as broken, prone to violent outbursts and self-harm. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
It's a difficult story. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us on your Tuesday morning. 6:10 a.m. We don't have better news with the weather today. Sorry about that. Abby's going to be in a moment. We're staying cool today across most of Manitoba. Some snow to the north. Well, this hour on the show, we've got quite a lot coming up. We're going to start talking about what's going on at the University of Manitoba this weekend. They're hosting what they call the largest science and engineering festival. So we'll find out all about it and what's going on there that you can take part in. In addition, this hour on the show, how to end a war. That is U.S. President Donald Trump's issue as he tries to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. We have an expert on about the available options this morning, so we'll look at the latest in that conflict. Plus, coming up at 10 to 7 this morning, we'll talk about politics on this side of the border. Ryan Tumulty is going to give us a closer look at what Prime Minister Mark Carney's weekend trip to Armenia it was about. He met with European leaders, and he had quite a lot to say. If you haven't seen clips from this, he had some strong language. And once again is stepping up to show some leadership about what he thinks the new world order, so to speak, is going to be, and what Canada's role in it is going to be. So stay tuned. We're going to talk to Ryan about that. Right now, Heather Wells joins us with other headlines from Manitoba and developing news. Good morning again.
Good morning. Well, a veteran political analyst says decorum at the Manitoba legislature has dipped to a new low. University of Manitoba Professor Emeritus Paul Thomas says new House rules announced yesterday show the Speaker's frustration with the lack of respect during question period. The Speaker, Tom Lindsay, added 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist, and he also pledged to crack down on heckling. We'll hear more about that coming up. And some rural communities are making waves over proposed changes to the Drinking Water Safety Act. The changes would potentially require most wells with at least 15 connections to be chlorinated at the owner's expense. We're going to hear how that's going to impact some communities in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
You know, Heather, last time the Premier was here and we pushed him on decorum in the House and whether or not if it comes from the top, what is he thinking around? And he actually looked back in time and said that he didn't think it was all that much worse than in the past. And he was citing some things that had been said to him and about him by former Premier Brian Pallister, which I looked up. I think there was a swear used, Pallister called Canoe a-hole for the sake of radio here. And there was some other language used in the past. But what I wonder through all of this, despite what the politicians are saying, despite what they're saying, the analysts are saying, I wonder what Manitobans are thinking as they're watching all of this. Yeah. So I'm just inviting people to weigh in because we've been covering this story about lack of decorum really for a lot of months here in the Ledge. And I've asked both the leaders, Abby Khan was here as well, and they continue to double down, and point across the aisle. So I'm wondering what Manitobans are thinking as you're watching this out there. Maybe you're just thinking it matches the tone of the world now. Maybe it doesn't bother you, or maybe you are hoping for more or better. But I'd love to hear what you're thinking around this. So 788-3205, we can open the listener lines this morning, and we'll see.
I was just going to say, yesterday when Tom Lindsay made these changes and adding words that were not allowed, he did say that even school teachers were telling him when they would bring their classes in to watch question period that the kids didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, kids are the first ones to tell you, right? Mom, I got a swear jar or whatever over here. Like, they're the ones to remind us sometimes how to behave, and we're trying to teach them how to behave.
Exactly.
So what do you think in Manitoba? Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
788-3205. Let's turn to other things. The weather. Abby Adiemi has the forecast in hand.
Oh, Marcy, the chilly days still continues. We have another chilly start to our Tuesday across the province, with temperatures really feeling much like late March than even early May or April, Marcy. Cloudy, a cool day. There's a slim chance of flurries in the forecast across most of the regions, and we're seeing light snow even in some areas. This morning I spotted light snow coming from the south down to Walk. For Winnipeg right now, we're looking at temperatures hovering around -2, feeling quite brisk under those cloudy conditions, and we're noticing the winds peak up. Expect our high to only get to 3 degrees today, which is well below the seasonal normal of 16, and that would come with some gusty northwest winds, a slim chance of flooring passing through, and then by the afternoon period we're going to jump from this -2 that we are stuck on all morning, and then we'll climb a bit to a high of 3 degrees later. Similar conditions across the south and up north. We're also seeing temperatures close to -10, more like this winter-like pattern still continues in the region. Still frigid in the north, but a cool day across the province. Cloud cover everywhere, scattered light snow from the north all the way down south. We'll notice it here and there, and some breezy conditions also down south. Winnipeg, we will be at -2 for most of the morning, and then we climb to maybe 3 degrees later in the day. Most of the regions down south will struggle to get to 4.
I don't know if you can call that a climb, but I'll take it, I guess.
As long as it goes above 0, it's a climb for me.
All right, let's go to the morning commute. Remind you where to call if you have an issue. Hi, Sierra Sanders.
Good morning, Marcy Marcusa. It's been pretty quiet so far on the commuter line as folks get their day started on this Tuesday morning. But the number to call this morning if there's something getting in your way or a situation pops up is 204-788-3093.
Well, I mentioned we were going to talk about the weekend. So on Saturday, the University of Manitoba's Fort Garry campus will turn into a big, giant science fair. They advertise it as Manitoba's largest science and engineering festival. The U of M's hosting their annual Science Rendezvous. They promise a lot of fun activities for families, and to find out more about it so you can plan your weekend, Nicole Amiot is the coordinator of the event, and she joins us now in studio. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So tell us what's going on at this event.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So picture a science fair, but so big. So it does take up quite a bit of campus, actually. It's been quite an effort to plan it and make sure everyone's safe and comfy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have about 60 interactive booths set up across campus. So all of those are hands-on activities for kids, families, kids of all ages, we've been saying, to take part in. So it's quite a variety. We do have 7 departments within the Faculty of Science, so there's something for everyone of every interest, as well as tons of faculties across campus are supporting as well.
Who's behind the different things that are going on? So some of the things are like giant bubbles, and there's prairie wildlife shows going on. There's also different experiments being shown. Is it the students? Like, how do the faculties come forward with all the things?
Yeah, so a good mix. So there's usually some support from faculty members, but honestly, the whole event is so largely run by volunteers. We've got about 600 probably taking part on Saturday. So they do everything from, a lot of them just come forward and say, hey, I want to run this booth. And, we give them a little bit of support and free rein to do that. And they come with some amazing stuff. We've got a student group who's doing like DNA extraction from strawberries. We've got and then all of the other roles too. So
there's a whole bunch of headlines here, and some of them I don't know what they mean. Some of them I do. So robots and rockets. So this means that kids aren't just watching this. I understand there's an interactive portion of that part.
Yes. So we have community partners from Magellan who will be doing some stuff with rockets. The theme for this year's event, and it is a national event, is Ignite. So quite topical. Obviously, everyone's pretty excited about space right now.
Yeah.
So,
what's the impossible oobleck run? It's described as a pool of cornstarch and water, it says, where the laws of physics are put to the test.
They are, yeah. So as you said, cornstarch and water, basically. Somewhat simple, but so it's a substance where if you stand on it, you will sink, but if you walk across it, you will be able to walk across it. So fun little challenge for everyone.
Have you tried it?
I have, yeah. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
So weather permitting, we'll have that set up outside. And,
got it.
Yeah.
Is most of this happening all across the grounds? You said that, there's 600 volunteers. So what should people know about where they should go, or what do they need to know about the hours it's running?
Yeah, so it'll run from 11 to 3. It is kind of all across campus. We'll have lots of signage, of course, and stuff like that. And our website's probably the best place to figure out parking and stuff like that. So umanitoba.ca/science. But yeah, we're doing it rain or shine. So there is a lot planned for outside. Some of those will just move inside if we can. Obviously not an indoor oobleck run, unfortunately, but fingers crossed we'll get a little bit of a hike in weather. But
what are the ages of that this would appeal to for if people are thinking about their families?
I think every age. I think there really is something for everyone. So we've been saying young and young at heart, but even the littlest of attendees have a good time. So
okay, I asked that because of this display. The Big Bangs, it's called, from Tesla coils throwing lightning to liquid nitrogen explosions. I'm presuming the pyrotechnic stuff is going to be displayed and not tried.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's one of our one of our shows that we're doing. So there's multiple across campus. Those ones are ticketed, but they're free. So it's just day of will have registration available. So that, yeah, the physics show is especially pretty cool. One that we do have is outdoors. I think you mentioned it earlier, the Prairie Wildlife Rehabilitation Center show. So again, fingers crossed, we'll have that set up on the quad.
It looks clear and 11 degrees in the weekend, so you should be okay.
Yeah, so that'll be pretty neat. We've got some animal ambassadors coming, think birds of prey. So
this is not the first year that you've done this. So are there fan favorites from past years that are coming back if people are listening saying, I'm going to go to that again?
Yes. The Human Computer Interaction Lab will have the robots set up that people can go check them out. They'll be kind of set up in a room. I don't know, so the robots don't go rogue.
That's not you know what, 10 years ago we would have been joking about that. Now we're like, okay, for real.
No. We also have the Cells to Ecosystems tour. So that takes place in an actual biological sciences lab. So that's a really neat thing for the public to be able to check out as well.
It's a fun event, but at the heart of it, I guess, so why is it important to get today's youth interested in science, in your view?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, we just want to get people excited about science and inspire that next generation of science and, show people that it is really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. We get a pretty good base in even public education, but knowing that there's all these applications, all these cool things you can do with it, just really inspiring people to get excited about it.
Thank you so much for coming in early, Nicole. We appreciate it and enjoy it. I know it takes you guys like 6 months to put this together, so weather should cooperate and everything will be good. But Saturday, I'll remind people to go to the website, and we appreciate you coming in.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marcy.
Live on CBC with us this morning, Nicole Amiot, the events coordinator of Science Rendezvous. So it's happening on Saturday, as she mentioned. The best thing to go to is to the U of M website and just check it out. You can Google Science Rendezvous, U of M. So Saturday, 11 to 3, it is on campus at the University of Manitoba's Fort Garry campus.
The puck may have dropped on the playoffs, but the news doesn't stop for hockey. I'm Brittany Greenslade, host of CBC Winnipeg News at 6. To get your local news, stream CBC Winnipeg News at 6, 24/7 on CBC Gem, the CBC News app, and selected streaming platforms. CBC Winnipeg News at 6, your local news on your favorite streaming device.
Well, the light flurries are spotted in downtown Winnipeg. It's -2 right now. That's going to continue. It's going to be windy too, winds northwest 30 to 50. And as Abby's been mentioning already, we're going to get to around 3 degrees for this May the 5th. Next on the show, let's turn our attention to what's happening south of the border. U.S. President Donald Trump started a war with Iran that it appears he cannot get out of. Iran continues to block the Strait of Hormuz, as you likely know, holding international shipping hostage. Trump has launched so-called Operation Freedom to escort freighters out of the strait, but it is not going well. Meantime, the Revolutionary Guard in Iran still holds power and is eliminating internal enemies. And for the latest, Stuart Prest is with us, political scientist at the University of British Columbia. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So just remind us, first of all, the situation of these stranded merchant vessels there. We have a map up on our CBC feed if people are watching the show on YouTube. And this huge amount of cargo that's in limbo right now, correct? As well as tens of thousands of people, like sailors.
That's right. There are ships from up to 85, 90 different countries there, and some 20,000 sailors on 2,000 ships that are just floating there in the Persian Gulf, just beside the Strait of Hormuz, unable to traverse the strait and to reach the ocean and to be able to return home because of this blockade that was put in place in response to U.S. attacks in late February. And so this is a face of the conflict that it is easy to lose sight of. We're so focused on the loss of energy supplies for the global economy, but there are tens of thousands of people who are caught up and unable to return to their normal lives because of the violence.
So how tentative, dangerous is this moment? Because both Iran and U.S. are threatening violence in this situation.
Yeah, this Operation Project Freedom that the United States is undertaking, it seems like it's a gambit to try to loosen things a little bit, that we have this ongoing ceasefire, but no real movement on negotiations. But the attempt to try to escort commercial vessels through the strait has destabilized that ceasefire. And we have reports that Iran has fired drones and missiles on a number of ships. One tanker by the UAE has been struck. We have accounts that the United States has fired on and sunk 6 speedboats that Iran uses to maintain its blockade. So there is a real chance that we will return to a hot conflict of the kind we saw earlier in the year.
Let's talk about options then that are left for Trump. What are they in your view?
In the short term, there are honestly no good options here. Once you begin a conflict, you give your opponent a vote over when that conflict ends. So the United States can't simply unilaterally bring about an end on their own terms here. The U.S. could increase pressure on Iran using a military response, but that so far has only strengthened the regime, even as it has led to costs for the country of Iran. The governing regime organized around the Revolutionary Guard seems to have solidified their power over the course of the conflict. So that doesn't seem like a workable option and would be a very costly one. The stalemate continues to grind on. We could see this continue in perpetuity, inflicting costs on the global economy and on the country of Iran, but much of that falls on the shoulders of the population and not the regime itself, and that's an important distinction. And so it's unlikely to change the decisions of Iran. And beyond that, the U.S. could either simply withdraw and leave Iran in control of the strait, or we could see a return to negotiations. But the two sides are very far apart. We're still at the talks phase there.
And what do we know about what's happening inside Iran?
Well, reports are difficult to come by, but what we do know is frankly terrifying. What the Iranian people are going through is essentially they are facing a dual threat, one from the potential of renewed violence, attacks on the country, but also from their own government. There were protests in Iran in the last year. This conflict, though, has given that governing regime the opportunity to effectively crack down and solidify their position. So reports indicate up to 50,000 people have been swept up in arrests. There have been up to 24 executions of activists who were involved in leadership of those protests, and widespread allegations of torture of others who have been detained by the regime. So there is this sense of dual fear for anyone who is living in the country simply trying to survive this moment. And no one is really winning in this conflict, but it's clear the Iranian people as a whole are those coming out the worst.
Obviously, if you look at past history, Iran will hold out. But do they have strategy in the strait right now and in the conflict, in your view?
Well, I think the strategy for the regime itself, again, is to win by surviving. This is an existential threat for them. The U.S., when President Trump launched this conflict, was adamant that something fundamental would have to change in the country. So simply by holding on and maintaining their position and using effectively the accident of geography that gives them this influence over global shipping, they are able to inflict a toll on the world at large and continue to put pressure on the United States to take a different tack. And so to dislodge the regime would either require a massive military intervention, which doesn't really seem to be in the cards, or even a good idea on any front, or to wait for a kind of economic blockade to starve the regime. But again, that will fall on the people of Iran primarily. So I think the Iranian regime simply will try to hang on by any means they can to try to keep the pressure on the United States.
All right, Stuart, thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Stuart Prest is a political scientist over at the University of British Columbia. We'll hear more on the conflict, of course, on World Report today. We have business news coming up. Chrisley Ramlakan joins us every morning. Today she has some news about the latest on the country's national strategy here in Canada around artificial intelligence. So we'll find out what she's learned. Also coming up with Chrisley, retirees are delaying downsizing their homes in this country as well in Canada. So we're going to find out more about what is behind that kind of a decision if your family's making one like it. Coming up, we have your local news. Also want to mention if you see any problems in traffic, you can give us a call, and that's whether or not you're here in Winnipeg or whatever city you're in or community across Manitoba. Let us know what's going on in the highways as well. Should be pretty straight ahead. This cool weather is just really bringing us a gray drive. But you can call us and let us know. 788-3093. Your news from Manitoba on CBC is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's a shiver in the air as you get going on this May Tuesday in Winnipeg. A high today of 3. Still that strong northwest wind. Right now we are at -2. A longtime political studies expert says he has never seen such vitriol at the Manitoba legislature. University of Manitoba Professor Emeritus Paul Thomas says new rules instituted yesterday by the Speaker show how bad it's become.
This was deep frustration, and he was just groping to find some procedural mechanism to rein in members, to let them have them be more civil towards one another, to have them display more decorum.
Speaker Tom Lindsay added 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist. He also pledged to crack down on heckling. Thomas says all 57 MLAs feel like they're entitled to shout at each other, and some utter physical threats. He says it all starts with the two-party leaders, Wab Kinew and Abi Khan, who he says need to find ways to show more respect, even if they don't like each other. Well, public school teachers need more support as they work with a growing number of students with complex needs. That is according to the Manitoba Teachers Society. It says 81% of educators who responded to a survey say class size, complexity, and lack of supports are their main concerns. Society President Lillian Clausen says the number of support staff has dwindled, forcing teachers to take on more responsibilities than before.
Now, teachers in a classroom are becoming the counselors and social workers and have all of these roles that they're undertaking now that they used to have a team of people to help them with before.
The Teacher Society is calling for more provincial funding for schools. Education Minister Tracy Schmidt says her government has increased school funding since being elected. Some rural communities are making waves over proposed changes to the Drinking Water Safety Act. The changes would potentially require most wells with at least 15 connections to be chlorinated, and the owner foots the bill. The move could have a big impact on Hutterite colonies. The Pineland colony in southeast Manitoba has 107 people using a single well. That colony now has 11 months to chlorinate, build more wells, or face a fine. Titus Gross is from Pineland.
We feel it's overreach. We've never failed a test, so therefore, why chlorinate it?
Gross says he has met with other concerned colonies. The opposition PCs have delayed the bill amendments until the fall session of the Manitoba legislature. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce the name of Canada's next Governor-General this morning. During a French interview last month with Radio-Canada, Carney declared the next person to fill the role will be bilingual in English and French.
Absolument. Absolument.
Absolutely, Carney saying twice. Sources telling CBC the next Governor-General will be a woman. Mary Simon is nearing the end of 5 years in that job. She made history as the country's first Indigenous Governor-General. She speaks English and Inuktitut, but she was criticized for her lack of French. Well, before Carney makes his announcement, he will take part in a sacred bundle ceremony marking Red Dress Day. It's a day to bring attention to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQ plus people. At the event in Ottawa, family and friends who are missing their loved ones will comment on the progress Canada has made 10 years after launching a national inquiry into the crisis. Métis artist Jamie Black inspired the use of red dresses to represent missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls with an exhibit in 2010. Black displayed more than 100 red dresses around the University of Winnipeg campus to raise awareness of that issue. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A man who was imprisoned for a decade before being acquitted in the killing of a Winnipeg girl in the 1980s is not being allowed to continue with his lawsuit against the Manitoba government. Mark Grant sued Winnipeg police and the province in 2019, alleging they engaged in a negligent investigation and malicious prosecution that left him wrongfully convicted of killing 13-year-old Candace Dirksen. An appeal court decision says there was no evidence prosecutors acted with malice. One of Grant's lawyers says the lawsuit will continue against police, and they're considering whether to ask the Supreme Court to hear the case. Celebrating a hockey victory in Flin Flon. A throng of fans cheering on the Flin Flon Bombers, winners of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League title for the first time in 33 years. That team now has a chance for national glory. They will play for the Centennial Cup in Prince Edward Island. Bomber President Tim Babcock is one of many fans making the trip.
It was a decision that I made, not subconsciously, probably 15 years ago. If the Bombers are in a national championship, we got to be there.
And another Manitoba team is also playing for the Cup. The Manitoba champion Niverville Nighthawks is going for Junior A glory as well. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So much fun for folks in those towns who've been waiting for that, as you heard, right?
Yeah, amazing. And what a way to lift the spirits of everyone in Flin Flon.
Agreed. And in Niverville. Hey, I was looking up on the announcement. I think we're going to get it later, so it won't be when we're on the air, Heather, but with the show, that is. But about the Governor General. We've only had one, I guess, from Manitoba, Ed Schreier. Yeah. And that was 42 years ago. So it's funny when you start to look at how long ago that was, but he was in from 1979 to 1984. So we'll see whether or not there's a pick from the West or from Manitoba maybe today.
Yeah. They're talking about French being, apparently they go English-French, just like the Prime Minister picks used to, English-French, French-English. So we'll see what happens. The announcement comes at 9:30 Central Time.
Okay, perfect. So right after we're off the air here, we'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is 6:36 a.m. and Abby's here with our regional forecast on CBC.
Well, Marcy, all I can say is it's going to be a cloudy and unseasonable cool day with a slim chance of flurries in most of the region. And of course, this light snow, some flurries here and there really coming in and out of most of the regions. No warnings. It's just going to be more like a cool May Tuesday morning. For the Red River Valley region at this time in Winnipeg, we're seeing light snow in the downtown area. Windy conditions also being felt, gusting all the way to 40, -2 at this time. Expecting a high of 3 degrees later in the day, with those gusting northwest winds still staying with us for most of the morning and even into the evening period. There's a slim chance of flurries, and then tonight we'll see temperatures stay around this -2. For the southern regions in the Pembina Valley region, from Morden towards Port Luperi, we're looking at cloudy conditions, also light flurries in and out, temperatures around -2, warming up to 3 degrees later. Brandon all the way towards Nipawin, we're seeing -1 there, also cloudy. You get to 4 degrees later. In the Parkland region from Dauphin all the way towards Russell, we're seeing temperatures hover around -3, -4. Highs would get to 4 degrees later. We have light snow actually falling in the Dauphin area at this time. In the Interlake region, Gimli and nearby, we're seeing -3 there. Cloudy conditions, high of 3. Later in the day. And then for the central parts into the north, where we see temperatures between -4 and -10, starting from the PAR, we're seeing temperatures around -4, -5, light snow in some areas, cloudy conditions in some areas. You get to 1 later. Norway House and Thompson hovering around 6 degrees at this time with light snow. Highs would get to 0, while Lynn Lake, Gillam to Dula Lake, we're seeing those northern spots range from like -6 to -10. with light snow and highs between -1 and -5. And then for the Churchill and York region, we're looking at -8 there. Light snow falling, highs would only be around a -3 under some windy conditions. So it's more like a cool, cloudy day across the province with scattered light snow in the north and breezy conditions also being felt down south with some flurries in the Winnipeg area and Dauphin having light snow at this time. We're expecting a windy day in the city. We warm up to 3 degrees later. Right now it's -2.
I was just saying to Sierra, looking out the studio window here, how gray it is and the flurries. Like I feel like we're stalled. Like after Sunday's so nice, and then you know what it's supposed to be like. Like it feels like people want to do all these things. I don't even think we're being that demanding.
I know, but
like it's just sort of a little yard work would be okay, and
maybe wait for probably Sunday, Monday, where we can get to 18.
Yeah.
But for now, we're not going to get there till...
Well, maybe once it turns, it'll be the payoff and it'll stay super warm or something.
True.
All right, let's think positive. Traffic's quiet, Sierra?
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet so far this morning, Marcy. But with that snow falling, maybe keep an eye out for maybe a little more slick conditions on the roads as well. So maybe there's something to keep an eye out for there. But so far, no situations or anything to let you know about. But if that changes and there is something that pops up on your drive, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province, I'd love to hear about it. That number to call is 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you. Everybody wants to just go back to bed, I think. I feel like we should slap ourselves. Okay, all right, wake up, everyone. 6:20 is the time right now. Let's talk to Crystalie Ramlakan. She's here with our business news. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
You have some details on Canada's national strategy around artificial intelligence today.
Yes. So the federal government's promised new national AI strategy is delayed, but we did just hear from AI Minister Evan Solomon yesterday, who says it is coming soon. And he says it will consider the technology's impacts on the labor market. So it's been 6 months since the government wrapped up fast-tracked consultations on the strategy, and Solomon initially promised it would be tabled by the end of last year. And last fall, he said Canada could not afford to wait and had to move quickly. And while Solomon initially signaled an adoption-focused approach, experts say the public conversation has really now shifted more to focus on safety and social impact. And Canada has also strengthened relationships with other middle powers that are more pro-regulation than the U.S. under President Donald Trump is when it comes to AI. So Solomon says he is still consulting on the strategy.
Even when we did our consultations, the industry has changed dramatically. The impact of AI has changed, and we are consulting. Last week, I consulted with labor leaders, environmentalists, young kids on Gen Z. We are making sure that when we launch this strategy, there's an element, as you saw the 6 pillars in the spring economic update, that it will meet the changing needs of labor and all the stakeholder groups.
And last fall, the government appointed a task force to advise it on the new strategy. But critics had said the group leaned too much on the perspective of industry and the tech sector. But the government also held public consultations, and it received more than 11,000 comments. And Marcy, guess how they sorted through them? AI.
Of course they did. Let's go to another story. Retirees are delaying downsizing their homes. What's behind that?
Yes, so real estate watchers say retirees are contending with falling home prices and a lack of choice in the market. So only 10% of Canadians say they're aiming to move to a smaller home over the next 10 years. And that's according to an online RE/MAX Canada survey of more than 1,500 adults about a month ago. And among those 65 and older, just 16% intend to downsize in the next decade. And of those actually considering downsizing, nearly half say there is low availability of options in their communities. So real estate experts say that sentiment is one of the consequences of today's housing shortage, which policymakers and developers are trying to solve. So they say for years, not enough housing was approved to fit the needs of retirees looking for smaller but still adequate accommodations. And broader economic factors are also playing a role. The Canadian housing market has slowed over the past year as global trade friction has raised concerns about affordability and the labor market. And while that has pushed home prices down from those post-pandemic peaks, house values have still significantly appreciated compared with when many retirees entered the market. And, some economic forecasts predict a rebound could happen later this year. But, a sizable chunk of those would-be buyers want to make sure the market is at its lowest before they make their move.
And finally, the robotics pioneer behind the Roomba vacuum, the little round thing that roams around, everybody knows the cat's all over it, has a new idea for something else that follows us around the house?
Yes, that's right, a pet robot. So the former longtime CEO of Roomba maker iRobot unveiled the 4-legged prototype called the Familiar yesterday. So imagine a creature the size of a bulldog with doe-like eyes and bear cub ears and paws with touch-sensitive fake fur. So the lifelike machine is powered by the latest artificial intelligence, of course, but it's not the first time there's been a pet-like household robot. Sony introduced a small plastic robot dog in the late 1990s and rebooted the concept in 2018. But the creator of this toy says this one achieves something that hasn't existed before. He says it's not just a toy that you want to watch, but something that you want to interact with and hug like a pet. So the robot will make emotive animal-like sounds, but it's not going to talk. But of course, it's going to listen with an AI system that can understand and learn from what you say to it. And the creator says it benefits from the advances in generative AI sparked by chatbots like ChatGPT. Now, it could take a while before these machines actually start selling, but one target demographic is retired people who are past the peak age of pet ownership. But Marcy, the first thing that I thought of when I heard this was, maybe, okay, less mess than a real live pet, but another listening device in your home, that could be a safety concern.
Also, the command I want to give all of these things is make dinner. Still waiting for that, with all due respect to the companionship. It's kind of cute, though. I Googled it. It's kind of, it's sort of a cross between a dog and a cat or something. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Crystalie.
All right. Thanks, Marcy.
Crystalie Ramlichan with our business news here on CBC. Well, how about some country music for you? Emma Peterson hails from Winnipeg, OSIS originally. The Manitoba Country Music Association award-winning singer released a high-energy track in early 2025, and we think on this cloudy morning we need some extra energy. So let's get it from her tune. This is Got It Back.
Went to, my eyes don't look for you no more. That dress you didn't like on me hung it back off the floor. Now I can finally listen to the 1975 again. Don't gotta listen to your music and pretend that I liked it, 'cause I never liked it. I got those back roads we drove under my wheels again. I got that tin roof, that kaboom. I fill it up with my friends. I got that Saturday night confident fright, 'cause you don't get under my skin. Everything I thought I lost, boy, since you ain't gone, I got it back. I can take a sip of Cuervo, and I don't taste your lips. I can go out with somebody new, that I don't miss your kiss. I can look myself in the mirror and finally see me. I'll never get those years back, oh, but at least I got those back roads we drove under my wheels again. I got that tin roof, that kaboom. I fill it up with my friends. I got that Saturday night confident fright, 'cause you don't get under my skin. Everything I thought I lost, boy, since you ain't gone, I got it back. I got it back. And I don't wanna be the girl you wanted me to be, 'cause I never liked her. No, I never liked her. Never liked it. I got those back roads we drove under my wheels again. I got that tin roof, that kaboom. I fill it up with my friends. I got that Saturday night confident fright, 'cause you don't get under my skin. Everything I thought I lost, boy, since you ain't gone, I got it back. I got it back. I got it back. I got it back.
It's a track from Emma Peterson, who hails from Manitoba. It's called Got It Back on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. We're still below zero here, -2 in Winnipeg, -1 in Brandon, -6 in Thompson. Light snow in Thompson and trace amounts of snow in Winnipeg. Oh, maybe a little more than that now. Some flurries coming down pretty good in downtown Winnipeg out our CBC studio window right now. Let's move on from the weather, shall we? Let's talk about tariffs, trade, and travel. Those are the big topics of conversation on Parliament Hill this week as the Prime Minister returns from Armenia. The government spending more money on assistance to the steel, aluminum, and copper sectors hit hard by the American levies. With CUSMA renegotiations on the horizon for this summer, this is what Industry Minister Mélanie Joly had to say yesterday on CBC. She spoke at a manufacturing facility. That's the clip we have. This was southeast of Ottawa.
We know that we can't control the White House. We can't control what's going on south of the border, but we can control what we're doing here at home. And so, in a moment like this, we just don't stand still. We act.
Manufacturing, of course, is one of the big areas of concern in our province in Manitoba under CUSMA. In addition to some of the issues that we have with steel, we don't have a big steel manufacturing here, but of course we do in Selkirk with Brunswick there. Let's have a look, though, at what the feds are saying right now. Ryan Tumulty's with us, political reporter with the Toronto Star. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why don't we start with the news that there's new support the government's going to offer to sectors that are already hammered by tariffs. Remind us what they've said now.
Yeah, so this is $1.5 billion, mostly in sort of low cost or no cost loans to businesses in this sector. So the U.S. has sort of expanded the reach of its tariffs. Initially, they sort of covered people who make steel or aluminum. So, the big mills or the smelters. But now they are moving that out to cover companies that make things out of steel and aluminum. So, sort of everything from sinks to fence posts that get made out of these materials. And so this new $1.5 billion, it's meant to help those companies retool, to find new markets, potentially new opportunities for growth. But I think it's going to be a challenge for all of them. It's not easy to shift your whole business in response to tariffs like this.
Do you think that this means that this funding is a sign from Ottawa that they think these tariffs in some form are here to stay, and that's why they're kicking in money now?
Well, you heard that quote from the industry minister. She said we can't control what happens south of the border, and I think that's very much true. The trade negotiations are fraught. The president seems to be able to change his mind on a whim. I think the government is trying to do the best it can to help companies steer around this. But they can't secure a trade deal with the U.S. without the U.S. signing on to it. So it's going to be a real challenge. And, Canada is in a position with the U.S. being such a major trading partner that we can't sign a bad deal. We can't just sign any deal and hope for the best. This really has to be a deal that works for Canada and works for Canada in the long term.
Meantime, Carney, the Prime Minister, spent the weekend with the leaders of the European Political Community Summit. So I guess for people to understand, what's the significance of Canada's invitation to that table?
Well, apparently we were the first, Carney was the first leader from a non-European country to attend that meeting. So that's significant. Canada is doing a lot to connect more with Europe. So we're part of a defense purchasing alliance. We're all going to buy defense equipment together. There are other efforts to, do more trade, more business deals, things like that. Certainly there's a lot of interest in all of that and in forging deeper connections. It does have its limitations, though. A lot of the steel and aluminum producers, for example, were saying they welcome the new funding and they'll look for new markets. But what they really need is a trade deal with the U.S. The U.S. is our biggest trading partner, and a lot of that is geography. So, I think this is going to be an ongoing challenge for the government.
Carney yesterday also making comments at that table, talking about again pushing sort of this realignment of the New World Order and the New World Power, and talking about Canada and the European countries being at the heart of that. Hopeful or political? What did you make of those statements? I see you nodding, so I know you saw what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, he said that that New World Order will be rebuilt out of Europe. And I think that's an acknowledgement that when it comes to the sort of Western democracies, liberal democracies like Canada, like a lot of these European countries, Europe is at the center of that kind of thinking. That's where most of the countries who view the world that way are. That used to include the US, but it really doesn't seem to anymore. So, I think that was an acknowledgement that the kind of world that Canada wants to rebuild, that Carney certainly wants to rebuild, Europe is going to be our ally in that effort in a way that maybe the Americans are not.
Just last 9:30, we're going to hear who Canada's next Governor General is going to be. Any thoughts, any buzz, any names being bandied about? All I've heard so far is for sure, bilingual.
Yeah,
French
sure,
and English bilingual, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is going to be a certainty. I mean, Mary May Simon speaks English and Inuktitut fluently, and I think that was important. But the fact that she never really seemed to get a hold of her French to be fully bilingual was really something that I think bothered people in Francophone communities, certainly bothered politicians in Quebec. So, I think that is something that they're going to address here. But, in terms of names, all I've got is idle speculation, and we'll just have to wait and see. But certainly, it's a big appointment, and it can be a very difficult one, as the past couple of governor generals have shown us.
Well, we're going to see who it is. And in the West here, we're anxious to see whether or not they might make a pick that's from our part of Canada. So, all right. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, thank you.
Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star this morning. That announcement, as I mentioned, about the new GG coming at 9:30 Central Time, right after we're off the air here. Coming up in the next hour of Information Radio, today is the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and 2S LGBTQ+ people. It's Red Dress Day. We're going to hear from the director of the Indigenous Student Centre at the University of Manitoba about what the day means to her and also what they're doing on campus. In addition, as you heard, Josh Krabs has some ongoing reports about mixed populations in some buildings in Winnipeg where open drug use and violence, specific to one Winnipeg housing complex he talked about this week, have a lot of tenants concerned about their safety. In fact, some seniors are having to leave their building to get home care because home care workers refuse to go in there. The province has been working to house chronically homeless people in the building. So part of the issue, they've said, the current population of tenants has been that they're mixing populations with folks coming out of encampments and finding shelter there. We're going to talk to the executive director of St. Boniface Street Links today. She disagrees with the approach the province is taking in terms of mixing populations. We're going to find out why, so stay tuned for that. Right now, it is 2 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells is in with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, a veteran political analyst says decorum at the Manitoba legislature has dipped to a new low. University of Manitoba Professor Emeritus Paul Thomas says new House rules announced yesterday show the Speaker's frustration with the lack of respect during question period. Speaker Tom Lindsay adding 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist. So we'll hear more reaction to that. And the community of Woodridge has locked up its public well. A local councillor says it's because of proposed changes to the Provincial Drinking Water Safety Act. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
It is -2 in Winnipeg. We're only going to be around 3 degrees today. Gusty winds and there's flurries in the city this morning. In traffic, things are actually pretty good right now. So call, if not, 788-3093, and you can report anything to us, and we will pass it along. Give us a call on that commuter line. Well, while we've been talking about the fact that there's no sun, in the next hour of this show, we're going to hear about a trend among Gen Zers that's problematic. Nearly half of the generation continues to tan, despite knowing the increased risk of skin cancer. So why are they doing it? We're going to find out more about that trend. We're going to talk about it. May is actually Sun Awareness Month, so bit of a hook there. World Report coming up next.
On the current, Elections Alberta, flanked by Edmonton Police, served a cease and desist letter to the Centurion Project.
The Alberta separatist group, the Centurion Project, is being investigated by the RCMP and Elections Alberta after millions of voters' private information was made public. We'll talk about what this controversy means ahead of a potential fall referendum coming up on the current.
The Current with Matt Galloway this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Canadians will soon learn who will be our next Governor General. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce the appointment later this morning. That person will replace Mary Simon, who's been in the role for almost 5 years. Ashley Burke has more on the qualifications Carney is looking for.
This is the most high-profile selection the Prime Minister has been involved in since taking office. Multiple sources say Mark Carney put forward a name who is fully bilingual in French and English. 2 sources say it's a woman. Liberal MP Lisa Hefner reacted to that news and what she wants to see.
I've heard that it'll be a woman who speaks French really well, and that sounds great to me, but somebody who represents our country well, who knows the country well, I think it's a really important role.
Carney was clear in an interview with Radio-Canada last month he wants someone in this role fluent in both of the country's official languages. The current Governor General, Mary Simon, has faced criticism and hundreds of complaints to the Commissioner of Official Languages for not being able to fluently speak French. Liberal MP Jonathan Wilkinson is defending Simon, who is bilingual in English and Inuktitut.
She spoke an Indigenous language, which I think is fair game in Canada. But I think the next one, obviously, you want to make sure that folks in Quebec have comfort that Francophones are part of the fabric of Canada.
The formal announcement of a Governor General is made after the King officially approves the Prime Minister's recommendation. Carney is expected to release the news later this morning. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The World Health Organization says people with the Hanta virus may have been infected before boarding their cruise ship, and there may have been human-to-human transmission later on. The ship is anchored off Cape Verde with about 150 people on board. Officials there are refusing to let it dock, fearing the local population could then be infected. Maria Van Kerkhove is with the WHO.
The plan now is for the ship to continue on to the Canary Islands. We're working with Spanish authorities who have said that they will welcome the ship to do a full epidemiologic investigation, full disinfection of the ship, and of course to assess the risk of the passengers that are actually on board.
Van Kerkhove says there are now 7 confirmed or suspected cases of hantavirus. 3 people have died. The UN-Iran ceasefire appears to be on the brink of collapse. Both countries are still struggling for control of the Strait of Hormuz, and both launched new attacks in the Persian Gulf on Monday. The CBC's Tom Perry is watching developments from Jerusalem. Tom, what is the state of this ceasefire?
I'd say it's shaky, but so far, for the most part, holding. We saw Iran target the United Arab Emirates yesterday. That was for the first time since this ceasefire began. The UAE says that its air defense is engaged with 19 missiles and drones. We saw a major fire, though, at an oil facility caused by a drone strike. The U.S. went after Iranian fast boats, those small, fast-moving vessels that have been used to attack large freighters and tankers. But that said, the U.S. has not resumed bombing Iran. So as I say, the ceasefire for the most part is holding. We have heard from Iran now. The Speaker of the country's parliament posted a message on social media saying that the security of shipping and energy transit has been jeopardized by the U.S. and its allies. We've heard from Iran's foreign minister warning the U.S. and the UAE not to get dragged into what he calls a quagmire. And we heard from Donald Trump, who went on Fox News and said that Iran would be blown off the face of the earth. That's Donald Trump talking, if they targeted U.S. ships. Again, though, that hasn't happened yet. So for the most part, the ceasefire is holding, despite what we've been seeing happening.
And the conflict in Lebanon has not abated. Israel is targeting Hezbollah. Can you tell us the latest on that front?
Yeah, the Israel Defense Forces have told people in 2 more towns in southern Lebanon to evacuate because they're going to be going after Hezbollah. The Lebanese Health Ministry says that 17 people were killed in Israeli strikes yesterday alone. So people are still dying. Keep in mind, it's Lebanon and Israel that have agreed to a ceasefire. But Israel, of course, has been fighting Hezbollah, and they didn't sign on to this deal. And so while there is a ceasefire, Israel is still keeping up its attacks against what it calls Hezbollah targets.
The CBC's Tom Perry in Jerusalem. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of hypocrisy.
Russia's
defense ministry has announced it will pause fighting on May 8th and 9th. That is this Friday and Saturday. It expects Ukraine will agree to a temporary truce while Russia marks a military anniversary. But Zelensky says as soon as Russia made that announcement, it launched more missiles and drones at Ukraine. He says 5 people were killed in overnight attacks. A Canadian veteran says he's been fighting for years to get the benefits he's owed. He was medically discharged from the Canadian Armed Forces after experiencing seizures. As the CBC's Alison McCormick reports, since then he says he's been overwhelmed by bureaucracy.
Veteran Affairs is honestly just the biggest headache I think I've ever run into.
Storm Brock served as a combat engineer and a vehicle technician with the Canadian Armed Forces. But shortly after being stationed at the 5th Canadian Division Support Base Gagetown, he started suffering seizures.
I think it was about 12 seizures before they started thinking about the release of me. You have to be able to do a combat role at all times. So it really gave them no option but to release me.
Brock also has PTSD, and Veterans Affairs has approved that disability benefit. But it hasn't done the same for his epilepsy, denying it's service-related. Brock's wife, Michelle, says the appeal has been a long and complicated process, but to her, the request is simple.
He has a condition that is known to be triggered by stress, by sleep deprivation, from physical activity, and they've admitted that his PTSD was caused by his service. So they admit they've caused him stress, but they won't admit that they've caused him seizures.
Veterans Affairs declined an interview. In a statement, it says they have reduced processing times in recent years, but that there is still more work to be done. Brock says he has no choice but to go ahead and pay for his seizure medications, but he's hoping his appeal will be processed soon and that it goes in his favor. Alison McCormick, CBC News, Fredericton.
The spring melt is flooding parts of Saskatchewan. A larger-than-expected snowpack is thawing rapidly. The CBC's Jeremy Warren is following the story from Saskatoon.
There's something every year that happens. They've been evacuated so many times.
Last summer, it was wildfires. Today, flooding is forcing people to flee English River First Nation. It washed out the only road into the North Saskatchewan Reserve. Candace Paul is an emergency preparedness coordinator in the community.
There's a little bit of PTSD, and people get really stressed about being stuck, in the community. All the what ifs go through their heads. We're as well prepared as we can be.
A high flow advisory remains in effect for a broad swath of the province. Rapidly melting snow is creating overland flooding. Several communities have declared a state of emergency. Dan Palmer from the Highways Ministry says an area that looks safe could quickly change.
Know before you go. Check the route, and once you get to your location, check it again, because as we're seeing, conditions, flooding situations are changing rapidly.
The Public Safety Agency says water is receding in some areas, but others aren't expected to reach their peak flows for almost a week. Jeremy Warren, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada says it is investigating an incident that horrified onlookers in Vancouver's English Bay. Someone on a jet ski crashed into a gray whale. As Mira Baines reports, at least one researcher says that collision was completely avoidable.
Oh my God, no!
Several people saw the moment a person on a jet ski rode over the top of a gray whale in English Bay just before sunset on Monday. Kevin Connolly shot the video and says about 50 people had been watching the whale breach about 5 times when the jet ski rider sped into it.
Because I spoke to some other people there, and everybody was angry.
He says Vancouver police officers arrived shortly after. Richard Savage also saw what happened and says the person riding the watercraft needed help from a nearby boat.
The rider was thrown from the Sea-Doo and the Sea-Doo went tumbling as well.
Emergency health services say the rider was taken to hospital in stable condition. Whale researcher Jackie Hildering says there are limits to how close people can get to whales.
So the legal distance is 100 meters for a gray whale, 200 meters of resting with a calf, and that might allow for charges to be laid.
The condition of the gray whale is unknown. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, just go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. It is cloudy once again across most of Manitoba. We've seen flurries in Winnipeg this morning. Thanks for joining us. It is May 5th. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned, and this is Information Radio on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Coming up this hour on the show, we have ongoing coverage of a story about a building in Winnipeg where residents say their senior housing complex has taken a turn for the worse with drug activity, drinking, thefts, and break-ins. It started, they say, after people who are recovering from addiction and homelessness were placed in the building. Now, a community leader in homelessness and advocacy is upset with the province's approach. They say that the mixed population approach is not the way to go. So stay tuned. We're going to hear from her. In addition, today is Red Dress Day, and we're going to hear from the director of Indigenous Student Centre over at the University of Manitoba about what the day means to her. Also, about the significance of the day for Indigenous students and faculty and how that's evolved. So stay tuned for that conversation. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who has other morning headlines today. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a longtime political studies expert says he has never seen such vitriol at the Manitoba legislature. University of Manitoba professor emeritus Paul Thomas says new rules instituted by the Speaker of the House yesterday show how bad it's become. The Speaker, Tom Lindsay, adding 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist. And he also pledges to crack down on heckling. We're going to hear more reaction coming up. And public school teachers say they need more support as they work with a growing number of students with complex needs. The MTS, Manitoba Teachers Society, has done a survey showing 81% of educators who responded say class size, complexity, and lack of supports are their main concerns. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
We have more on that story coming up after 8 as well here in the show. Right now, let's go to Abby and find out what's happening out there with this weather.
Oh, Marcy, it's a chilly start to Tuesday across board. If you're just stepping out this morning, I'm sure you're going to feel those wind chill hit you. It's more like a seasonal cool day. We saw a slim chance of flurries in the downtown earlier that tapered off, but it's going to be on and off. It's going to stay with us for most of the day, while up north we're tracking light snow there. For Winnipeg, currently still at -2, feeling quiet and brisk under those cloudy conditions. It's going to get windy at some point, so be prepared for that. Highs for today will be around 3 degrees, and that's what the story would be like for most of the regions down south.
Look out the window of our studio. There's white on the ground.
I know, I see.
There wasn't that much snow, but there was enough, and there's enough coming down. And then people are just like, everyone's got their hoods up and their hats on. Nobody even wants to look at each other and smile.
No, Marcy, it's not. It feels like March again, and I don't want to relieve March.
Like March today. All right, buy a friend a coffee. It'll go a long way, I think, today. Let's find out what's going on with the commute this morning. Here's Sierra Sanders.
Hi, Marcy. Got a call from Tyler about a stalled vehicle at Kenniston and Sterling Lions. So that's a stalled vehicle there. The northbound curb lane is blocked just before that underpass there. And it looked like, Tyler said, it looked like they were dealing with a tire issue. Looked like they were dealing with something there. And he did mention that it kind of creeps up on you as you go down that hill to go under the underpass there. It kind of sneaks up on you a little bit fast there. So the northbound curb lane is blocked just before that underpass. So you want to keep that in mind, especially I know it is around 80 kilometers an hour in that zone. So it does sneak up there as you're speeding up. So keep an eye out for that. But so far, that's the only thing I've heard about so far on the commute. But if there's something that has popped up in the meantime, I'd love to hear about it. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, today is the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and 2S LGBTQ+ people. It is also commonly known as Red Dress Day. And to mark the day, red dresses will be on display in a lot of places in our communities, as well over at the University of Manitoba. Carla Lowen is there. She's Director of Indigenous Student Centre at U of M, and she joins us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
You look beautiful today. You're wearing red earrings, and also what's on your lapel there? Can you describe it for the listeners?
Yes. So this is a pin that I bought a few years ago, and it is a woman wearing a red dress, and she just sits on my shoulder as part of my remembrance today.
Yeah, it's really beautiful and shows up nicely against your black top as well. What do you think about when you wear that as a woman, as an Indigenous woman?
Yeah, so I wear it as a way to honor the people that I know who have been lost to murder, and just as a way to honor the community that I work with.
Let's talk about the community at the University of Manitoba. What do you hear from Indigenous students about what today represents for them?
It represents an opportunity for the voices that have been lost to be remembered and honored. And it's also an opportunity for individuals to pause and reflect. I know students who've been affected by violence against Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people. And so it's important for them to be seen and heard.
What are the when you think about why it's crucial that we continue year-round, but also on this day where we pause and reflect, to think about sharing the stories of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, especially in our province. Tell me about why it's crucial to keep their memories alive.
It's important because, particularly within our context of a high Indigenous population in our province, to really continue to learn about why it's called a national crisis, and not be impatient when it comes to what is often seen as, protest or, the Indigenous folk are at it again, because we come together for a purpose, to bring learning to the community and to honor those who went missing or murdered. So it's really just a learning opportunity. It brings awareness and it brings honor.
I was talking about, Carla, over the years, how things have evolved, since we started really doing better public recognition and any public recognition of these women and girls that have been lost and are still missing. Do you think we're over the stereotype that it is somehow their fault?
I think there's been movement in that area because I remember just being younger and it wasn't talked about. It was often just considered as Indigenous community issue where, the stereotypes and racism kind of just made people kind of write off that wasn't their problem. But now I really have seen a growth, especially since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a growth in understanding, and people want to learn about it and be more mindful and respectful about these tragedies. And so I think that there is a change in that, but there's still lots of work to do.
What's it like for you knowing that, when you were younger, that support wasn't there at all, that in fact you would be left with that message that somehow it's these, girls' fault and people's fault. And, this is your friends, family, loved ones. As you said, people are personally affected here. Like, let's not make this an away thing. But then to be in the role you're at U of M now and watch young people understanding that from the get-go and having that support. When
I was a young student, when something would happen in the community, I remember just feeling uncomfortable and sad and not knowing who to go to talk about it. But now, I've been working with Indigenous students for 20 years now, and they know that there's people to go to. There's people that are willing to listen, not just in the Indigenous faculty and staff community, but also, their instructors and their friends and their peers. So I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah. You yourself, I understand, grew, because you shared a little bit about your personal history with CBC. You grew up in a non-Indigenous family. So was that, were you aware of sort of some of the, of your own history and identity growing up though?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to meet most of my biological family once I entered my university years. And I know, and out of respect for the family, I don't speak too much, but I know that they've had personal tragedy in their lives, including a cousin who was murdered. And so, it's a generational impact. I'm glad to know them, but it's definitely, there's sadness there when it comes to the things that have happened in my own family.
Let's pull out to the wider educational level on this Red Dress Day. What do you see that still needs to be done surrounding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls across the country educationally that we're still not doing?
Well, I think the education system still has to improve and go faster in talking about these issues at the secondary level, and for sure at this post-secondary level. Universities have responsibility for reconciliation, and so this learning is part of that. Giving a campus community time to observe Red Dress Day is critical to students and staff because they are affected each year. whether personally or by community tragedies.
What are we going to see over at the U of M today if people are on campus around Red Dress Day?
Yeah, so two of my team members put together a red dress display at the building where we work in, making the argument called Eagle Lodge. So we have dresses hanging inside and outside of our space. And then on Thursday, the Center for Human Rights Research is putting on an event about this national crisis.
It's interesting because I know you've said without an avenue to talk about this, it's the same as ignoring the problem. That's a very powerful way to put it. I really am leaning into that today. Yeah. Thank you very much, Carla, for being with us early this morning. We really appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
You as well. Carla Lowen with us live on Zoom, the Director of Indigenous Student Centre over at the University of Manitoba. Coming up on the program at 10 to 8 this morning, residents say that their senior housing complex has taken a turn for the worse. Josh Crabb with a special report. They say there's been drug activity and drinking, thefts and break-ins. He was in Information Radio on the show, on Monday. He said this all started, residents told him, after people who are recovering from their own homelessness and addiction were placed in the building. Now, one community advocate who works with the homeless population and has for years says she's upset with the mixed population approach.
Those two populations should never be mixed. That's housing that is geared to support a very specific population.
So coming up, we're going to talk to her. That is coming up at about 10 to 8 this morning. That is Marion Willis of St. Boniface Street Link. Stay tuned for that. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us here with our team at Information Radio. And we have sports coming up as well in a few minutes here. So we will set up what's going on with the hockey playoffs. Light snow continues to fall. It's -2 and traffic not too bad out there. If you have any updates on the commuter challenges that Sierra had mentioned earlier, you can give us a call at 788-3093. But in Winnipeg, things are moving pretty well overall. Well, we have time for another tune from a local artist, and we love playing William Prince in the show. Here he is. This is brand new music from him. He's a 2-time Juno Award winner, of course. The tune's called Lighthearted on 89.3 FM.
Don't know what day it is. That's okay, 'cause it's all the same between the numbers. Almost paradise, and it feels so nice. Never waiting on the weekend. Lighthearted. Sooner or later, it all runs out. Like luck and gasoline. Dreams of the major league. In the end, I'm still happy I tried it. Won't leave undecided. Just not meant to be. Lighthearted. Think I'll roll another song. Let it sing along with me in whatever key. Think I'll call up an old friend, see how they're doing, where they've been. Lighthearted. Sooner or later, it all runs out. Like luck and gasoline, love on the silver screen. In the end, I'm still happy we tried it. Don't have to fight it, just not meant to be. Lighthearted, call the ambulance. Lighthearted, this is how it ends.
William Prince, new music from him, Lighthearted. 7:25 a.m. on a cloudy Tuesday morning. I have to look at the calendar to remind myself it's May in Manitoba. It feels like hockey season, though. Maybe that's a bonus if you're watching the playoffs. It's time for Morning Sports on CBC. Scott Regehr joins us live. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
So let's start with hockey. If a Canadian team is going to win a championship, Montreal is poised, could be responsible for doing it if they can continue with the, momentum they started here.
Yeah, for sure. So in the NHL, the Habs, the last team standing, of course, from this country, they'll begin their second round series in Buffalo tomorrow. Then in the PWHL, the Victoire, the league's top team during the regular season, are back in action tonight. They'll host Minnesota and will try to keep their focus better than they did against the Frost in an overtime loss to start this series. In that game, Marcy, Montreal twice gave up goals about a minute after they had scored themselves, and that's something that needs to improve, says their forward Maggie Flaherty.
When you score a goal, obviously your heart's racing, the crowd's heart's racing, our whole bench is racing. So we definitely need to find a way to manage those emotions. I think you never want to get scored on right after you get scored against, and unfortunately that happened a couple times. So now it's a focus of ours. It's like, okay, we can't get too high here. It's okay. We know we can score. We know we can also stop the puck. I do think that's something that we're going to try and own in on and keep that energy a little bit more even.
Yeah, if they don't, the Victoire could find themselves on the brink of elimination and heading back to Minnesota. The Frost, remember, have won the Walter Cup in both the league's first two seasons, and they're playing, no doubt, with a chip on their shoulder since Montreal chose them as their opponent, which was the Victoire's right, with that unique rule. If you finish first in the overall standings in the regular season, you pick your playoff opponent. So puck drop is at 6 o'clock Central Time tonight.
There's a Winnipeg Jet up for a major award, right?
Yeah, which after the season they had might surprise some. But Jonathan Toews is that Jet. He's been named one of three finalists, Marcy, for the Masterton Trophy, which is given to the player who, quote-unquote, best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. Toews, of course, returned to the league after an absence of 2.5 years dealing with a variety of health-related issues, including long COVID. He returned this year at age 38. He played every single games for his hometown team, had double-digit goals, best in the league among regular centermen in face-off percentage. So, yeah, a success. Here is Toews.
It's all about finding balance within yourself, and I think had I not stepped away and I kept pushing through, then maybe something more serious or chronic would have developed. But I learned a lot about myself in the process, and it's nice to have the confidence to feel that resilience that your body can heal, and a good reminder that it's an honor to play in this league and to play this sport at the highest level, and it means a lot to me. I'm thankful for it all.
Yeah, no Winnipeg Jets players ever won the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy, so Toews could be the first. He's up against defenseman Rasmus Dahlin of Buffalo and Gabriel Landeskog of Colorado, and we'll see whether he can make a bit of history, Jets history.
Let's keep talking about the Jets, though, because them, as well as several other Canadian teams, are hoping also for some good fortune later today.
Luck be a lady tonight.
Yeah, the Jets are going to have lots of luck if they're going to win the NHL's draft lottery, which goes today. The Jets have a 6.5% chance of landing the top overall pick, which many expect will be used to take Yukon Gold, Gavin McKenna, the highly skilled forward from Whitehorse, Yukon. As for the team with the best hopes, that would be the Vancouver Canucks, who finished in last place in the standings. The Canucks have a 25.5% chance that the ball will fall their way, but if you've followed their fortunes over the years, they've never had any sort of draft luck, so I'm banking it on an outsider. Maybe the Jets will get it with that 6.5% chance. We shall see.
We can believe in that. We're the city that wasn't supposed to have a team come back, so
this is true. And they've only ever had one first overall draft pick.
Have we really?
Way back when? Yeah, 1.0 version of the team.
Yeah.
1981. Care to venture a guess?
You go.
The late, great
I'm going to
Dale
get it wrong.
Hawerchuk.
Oh, was it Dale?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I could have guessed that. I've shamed myself this morning. I'm going to get email now.
Sorry to put you on the spot. That's on me. That's on me.
That's all right. Thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, you too.
That is Morning Sports with Scott Regehr. We're coming up to news time at 7:30 here. Traffic's fine. Call Sierra if not. 788-3093. Also, if you thought the tanning beds went out in 1981, then you're wrong, because we're going to talk about a trend among Gen Zers. That generation, apparently, there's some warnings for them. Nearly half of the generation, according to the Canadian Dermatology Association, continues to tan and use devices like tanning beds despite knowing the increased risk of skin cancer. So we're going to talk more about that and hear more about that. It came up actually in a previous conversation here on the air, specifically around young women who were trying to look tan because they were looking at how they looked when they were on social media or in photographs. So we're going to hear more about some of the warnings around these tanning beds. Right now it is time for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. There's that May shiver in the air as you step outside this morning. It's a chilly one. -2 right now. We have seen some light snow this morning. Strong northwest wind again today with a high of just 3. A veteran political analyst says decorum at the Manitoba legislature has dipped to a new low.
Order, please. Order!
Yesterday, Speaker Tom Lindsay adding 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist. He also pledged to crack down on heckling. University of Manitoba Professor Emeritus Paul Thomas says new House rules show the Speaker's frustration with the lack of respect during question period. Thomas says all 57 MLAs feel they're entitled to shout at each other, some uttering physical threats. He says it all starts with the two-party leaders. Thomas says there is an extra onus on the Premier because he holds the highest office in Manitoba.
Sometimes he seems to take glee in raising the temperature and engaging in even more high-octane language to score points against the opposition leaders.
Thomas says Wab Kinew and Obi Khan need to find ways to show more respect, even if they don't like each other. Public school teachers need more support as they work with a growing number of students with complex needs. That is according to the Manitoba Teachers Society. It says 81% of educators who responded to a survey say class sizes, complexity, and lack of supports are their main concerns. Society President Lillian Clausen says the number of support staff has dwindled, forcing teachers to take on more responsibilities than they ever have before.
Now teachers in a classroom are becoming the counselors and social workers and have all of these roles that they're undertaking now that they used to have a team of people to help them with before.
The Teachers Society is calling for more provincial funding for schools. Education Minister Tracy Schmidt says her government has increased school funding since being elected. The community of Woodridge has locked up its public well. A local councillor says it's because of proposed changes to the Provincial Drinking Water Safety Act. Mark Bernard says the changes would force the community to install a chlorination system, something the community can't afford. Now, only the local fire department has well access, but they need a key to open the well, and that is an extra step for emergency crews responding to fires.
Why? Why would we now put our community at risk to put a lock and key on it?
Environment Minister Mike Moyes says the province is open to finding a solution. The opposition PCs have delayed the changes to the Drinking Water Safety Act until this fall. Those proposed changes would affect wells right across Manitoba. A man who was imprisoned for a decade before being acquitted in the killing of a Winnipeg girl in the 1980s is not being allowed to continue with his lawsuit against the Manitoba government. Mark Grant sued Winnipeg police and the province in 2019, alleging they engaged in a negligent investigation and malicious prosecution that left him wrongfully convicted of killing 13-year-old Candace Dirksen. An appeal court decision says there was no evidence prosecutors acted with malice. One of Grant's lawyers says the lawsuit will continue against police, and they are considering whether to ask the Supreme Court to hear the case. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce the name of Canada's next Governor-General this morning. During a French interview last month with Radio-Canada, Carney declared the next person to fill the role will be bilingual in English and in French.
Absolument. Absolument.
Absolutely, Carney saying twice there. Sources telling CBC the next Governor General will be a woman. Mary Simon is nearing the end of 5 years in that job. Well, before Carney makes his announcement, he will be taking part in a sacred bundle ceremony marking Red Dress Day. It's a day to bring attention to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQ plus people. At the event in Ottawa, family and friends who are missing their loved ones will comment on the progress Canada's made 10 years after launching a national inquiry into the crisis. Métis artist Jamie Black inspired the use of red dresses to represent missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls with an exhibit back in 2010. Black displayed more than 100 red dresses around the University of Winnipeg campus to raise awareness of the issue. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Well, sending their team off in style. Fans of the Flin Flon Bombers filling Main Street cheering on the players who rode on fire trucks on Sunday in celebration of their first championship in decades. The Bombers won the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League title. Team president Tim Babcock.
Hockey's a game that brings us all together, and I know that we'll be wearing different jerseys in the crowd maybe, but at the end of the day, there's a common ground that we're all there for the same reason, to cheer on our boys, and it's going to be a good time.
The Bombers are on their way to Prince Edward Island for the Centennial Cup, and another Manitoba, the Niverville Nighthawks, also are there playing as they are the Manitoba Junior champs. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
And those communities are totally into it. So,
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we're going to... If you're going and you're listening, by the way, just seriously, radio 893 at cbc.ca, because we would love to talk to you from there to see how all this turns out. Win or lose, right? You're going to go follow your team. It's going to be fun for them.
Oh, it's going to be great. And we've got like 2 chances there, so this is great.
Someone's coming home with something. Come on. All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into the forecast here for your Tuesday, May 5th. Here's Abby Adiemi.
Good morning. We have a grey, breezy spring day with light snow to the north and some flurries across the southern region, really making it feel brisk with those windy conditions that we are noticing, making May a cool one. For Winnipeg right now, -2, light snow at the airport, flurries at the Forks. We warm up to 3 degrees across most of the regions down south. We're seeing -3s there, and up north we're looking at temperatures between -4 and -10 towards Tudula Lake this morning with light snow. We also have light drifting snow around the Churchill area, temperatures around -7. Most of the regions up north would get close to -5, while down south we'll be hugging -4.
Okay, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Sarah Sanders just on the phone. Traffic has been pretty calm so far this morning, so we'll have an update as needed, but call us if we need, 788-3093. Well, next on the show, May is, despite the lack of sun, Sun Awareness Month, because eventually we know it's coming. Summer approaches. Some of you might be feeling a bit like this. Just listening to this is putting me in a good mood. Who doesn't love the sun? However, we have a story next about too many younger folks that are soaking up too much sun. The Canadian Dermatology Association warns that nearly 4 in 10 Gen Z Canadians still tan, despite knowing the risks. Dr. Ivan Litvinov is a dermatologist and associate professor of dermatology at McGill University, and he joins us this morning. Hi there.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
I'm a Gen Xer. I come from the 80s. And so I thought that, the knowledge about sun damage and tanning beds would have been sort of so well understood. Tell me a little bit about this trend among Gen Z.
Yeah, so under the leadership of CDA and Jacinthe Desanier, the study was conducted amongst Gen Zs, which shows that, yes, the awareness is very high. 80% of people are concerned about skin cancers based on this recent study. And despite this knowledge, it doesn't translate into sun protection. And 40% of individuals are still tanning. They half of the population, they feel more confident with the tan. 40% say they look better in photos. So unfortunately, despite the awareness, people still want to engage in this high-risk behavior.
I should just acknowledge, Doctor, that behind you, there's quite a sound going on. So I know you've got this water construction or something going on, just so radio listeners can understand what's happening. But we did make out what you said there. So I'm not sure if we can improve that. We can hear you though. Yeah.
Great.
On a larger scale, tell me a little bit about what Melanoma Canada has reported across the board. Are young people lying in the sun to get this, going, or are they actually using the tanning beds?
Thank you. So Melanoma Canada is an authority in melanoma in our country, and it does highlight that there is significant increase in melanoma over the years. There's been 17% increase in melanoma incidence from 2023 to 2024, which is substantial, with 11,300 people now being diagnosed with melanoma. That's more than one case every hour. And Melanoma Canada does highlight that, unfortunately, based on the latest data in our research, that 33% of the adults actually report sunburn every year. And in children, that number is even higher. 40% of individuals, children and adolescents, report sunburn. And even having one sunburn early in life as a child or adolescent more than doubles your risk of developing melanoma later in life. So this is very important. It's a behavior, not just an individual behavior of sun protection, but we need to look at it as a family. Parents modeling good behavior for their children. Family unit taking care of each other. Everybody's looking out for each other, advising on appropriate sun protection measures, which of course include sun protective clothing, sunscreen, seeking shade, etc.
How does the damage from a tanning bed differ from the sun?
Yes. So tanning beds are fundamentally different because they provide more UVA radiation as opposed to the UVB radiation. Out and about, you get a majority of UVB radiation, and that's very erythemogenic, produces sunburn and higher risk of skin cancer. Tanning bed is mostly UVA. However, if you continue to use tanning bed repeatedly, the end result is the same. You damage your skin and you produce more skin cancer. The ultimate test is a skin getting tan. There is no such thing as a healthy tan, just like there is no such thing as a safe cigarette. So if you are getting tanned or you're getting burned as a result of a tanning bed or being outside, this is a clear sign that the skin is being damaged, the DNA is being destroyed in your cells, and you are predisposing yourself to skin cancer. There are some bans of tanning beds as well, correct? Just to reiterate some of this. Absolutely. So countries like Australia and New Zealand are good examples. Of course, they are dealing with substantially higher amount of skin cancer. They are number one in terms of the risk of melanoma and other skin cancers. And they're not playing around. They have banned tanning beds for now many, many years. Now, of course, our approach is different. Like, we're not banning cigarettes, we're not banning alcohol. There's a lot of harmful behaviors out there, but we give people free choice. The same thing is about tanning beds. We don't necessarily want to ban them in North America. We want to have engagement with the public and understand the risk of tanning. Like, I speak to experts in Manitoba, my colleagues, like Dr. Wiseman, who's a dermatologist.
Marnie Wiseman, yep.
Yeah, we try to reach out to the public. We have Molemobile coming. The Molemobile is coming to Manitoba in August to check for skin cancers with Melanoma Canada, to educate the public. Our dermatologists across Canadian Dermatology Association are engaged. We want to speak to people so they understand the risk of tanning beds and encourage people to follow safe behavior, but not necessarily ban them outright like they do in other countries.
The Molemobile, is it exactly what it sounds like? It's something on wheels that can check people for moles and see if they're going to be of concern on your skin?
Absolutely. So Phelan Katz, the CEO of Melanoma Canada, has done amazing work of championing Molemobile. This is a unit that went across BC, Ontario, Quebec, other provinces, that is staffed by dermatologists. So people can come in, people can check their skin, because the wait list in Manitoba to see a dermatology dermatologist is very, very long, of course, but people can go into this mole-mobile, check the moles that are worried about, perhaps get some information about how to take care of them, and also receive information on sun safety practices from the leading expert in the provinces.
It's interesting. We started talking about the trend in Gen Z, and you were talking about sort of everyone seeing themselves and following influencers and taking images of themselves. To change the tanning trend among Gen Z, how much do we have to change the whole narrative around what is an attractive skin, I guess, pigment?
Well, just to highlight, the sun tanning behavior and sun exposure is something that is evolutionary driven. When we're out in the sun for the first time in May or in June, we feel good. It feels great. The reason why is because sun stimulates production of natural opioids, beta endorphins. It's programmed this way so that humans get out of the cave and get the sun, because it's much safer to stay in a cave, right? There's predators out there. But if you don't get out in the sun, you will not make vitamin D and you will have rickets. So there is this evolutionary behavior that sun is addictive. It produces natural opioids and endorphins. So people want the sun. People feel good in the sun. The other thing about the sun, evolutionary, is it regulates a lot of behaviors, including our mating behaviors. Let's just think about like dogs in heat in spring, right? So mating behavior is regulated by the sun. And this is, of course, something that is important to young people. And so evolutionary, you have those pressures where people want to get the sun for a variety of reasons. Vitamin D, it feels good, it does regulate our mating behavior, etc. So, but on the other hand, there is this risk of long-term of sun damage. So we will look 10, 15 years older if we're in the sun, and a risk of skin cancer. And that's what exactly the Canadian Dermatology Association is highlighting. So if you want to be living well into your 80s and 90s and aging gracefully, then perhaps the goal is to go outside, enjoy the outdoors without getting tanned or burned, celebrating natural skin color.
Just last briefly, because I have just a little bit of time left, but there's something called the sunscreen paradox that I find really interesting.
It's true. This is something our group has been working on. And so what we have found, which is exactly what the CDA is showing, is that it is actually people with high awareness who are using sunscreen are the ones who are ultimately tanning, burning, and getting more skin cancer. And the reason why is because people are using sunscreen in this case as a permission to tan. Think about it. If we talked only about seatbelts.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense when you say it out loud. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about if we talked about road safety and we only talked about seatbelts. So I got my seatbelt on, but I'm drinking, I'm on my cell phone, I'm speeding. Am I safe? I'm not safe. So we should not be just talking about sunscreen. We should be talking about sun protective clothing, seeking shade, avoiding sun during the intense hours. But there is a sunscreen paradox where we over-rely on sunscreen. We put thin layer of sunscreen and we think we're protected for the rest of the day. We put it patchy so we don't cover ourselves. So people need to be aware of this. Over-reliance on sunscreen because of the sunscreen paradox, and in fact, employing all measures of sun protection, ultimately not getting a tan. That's the ultimate.
We will leave it there, Dr. Litvinov. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to join your program.
Yeah, really interesting. Live on CBC via Zoom, that's Dr. Ivan Litvinov, dermatologist and associate professor of dermatology over at the McGill University this morning, talking about his work with Manitoba counterparts and that mole-mobile coming to Manitoba this summer. We mentioned that we were going to cover traffic because Sierra was actually popping on the phone to pick up the traffic line when we usually do it just ahead of this interview. So what's going on out there?
Yeah, Marcy, I got a call from Alex about an accident on the south perimeter. So this is just before St. Mary's. He's seeing it, and he mentioned that it's backed up to almost, or the eastbound perimeter there, or heading eastbound, is backed up to almost Pembina, so that overpass there. And he says that the accident is in the left-hand lane. So the south perimeter, just before St. Mary's, there looks to be a two-car accident, and according to the caller, Alex, it looks to be backed up almost to the Pembina overpass there. So moving very slowly. And as well, got a call from Richard there on the south perimeter, the bridge over the Red River. He mentioned it's icy there, so you want want to make sure you're driving to the conditions and adjusting your speed if necessary, and expect some backups due to that accident there on the south perimeter just before St. Mary's. 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Sierra. Well, next on the show, as you've been hearing in the news this week, residents of a Power Street apartment block say they've seen an increase in violence in the building and in the area. The WRHA has suspended some service in the building as a result, in fact. Home care is not going in. Residents are crossing the street for care. Now, last week, we also reported a 55-plus building is going through similar struggles. The Canadian Polish Manor is at 300 Selkirk Avenue. They have had complaints about drug activity, drinking, thefts, and break-ins. That's prompted a provincial investigation. This is 69-year-old Frida Campbell describing a recent incident at the Canadian Polish Manor.
I heard a guy running down the hallway and he was screaming and coughing, and then that's when I went to my door and I looked out to people, and then I guess I got hit by it, and then I started coughing and choking and I couldn't breathe. I went to running to the bathroom. I poured water on my face and because I couldn't breathe.
Now, some residents blame the provincial government's Your Way Home strategy, which has housed formerly homeless people in available apartment units. So they're saying that those populations together are causing some of these challenges. Now, this strategy to mix populations is something that my next guest says is flawed. Marion Willis is the founder and executive director of St. Boniface Street Links, which works to house people experiencing homelessness. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
Thanks for being in studio today. Why flawed to mix the populations?
Well, first of all, the Your Way Home strategy is not flawed, but their approach to housing probably is not the best approach. We would never take a high-risk population and that is vulnerable, and then house them in buildings with seniors, and particularly in high-rise buildings with many floors where you really, it doesn't really matter if you have security at the doors or not. There's really no way to control the population. The other challenge is that we all talk about this term wraparound services, but wraparound services really, I actually don't even like that term anymore. You know, what individuals need are really solid case plans developed by competent workers that have the ability to really take the time, spend a lot of time with every single person they house, set small achievable goals, you know, really get to know your client, map out a pathway forward that addresses the addiction issues, the mental health issues, all of it. That's really lacking in this.
How much are we underestimating then, to follow your point, what that means in terms of how long the follow-up has to be, or how many services have to be there to help someone with success who's going to be housed and has formerly been houseless?
I think it's been grossly underestimated, and I think it's been since the beginning, long before Your Way Home. We've always used this term wraparound services, but it's actually something that's never really been funded or at least resourced to the extent that it really needs to be. It's easy to house people. The real work begins once you have that person housed.
Now, you have a housing unit that I visited last year that has people coming out of encampments as well, or that have come through the emergency shelter in Winnipeg. And it is all people. So it's one homogenous population.
Yes.
It's locked door.
Yes.
It has services on site there, but it is a public landlord that you partner with that has a building. How is that working now that it's a fairly new project still?
That's like a well-oiled machine. You know, people come in right out of homelessness, you know, into that space. It's 2 stories. It's not 17 stories. It's a 2-story building. It's locked. Everybody there signs a community living agreement, so they know that when they accept housing there, that this is transitional. It has supports. We have expectations. If you expect nothing, by the way, you get nothing. And they know that they're going to be required to work with the team to set some goals, and that from that location, they will eventually transition into permanent housing.
Is there ever any pushback where it's like, I need a roof, I don't need to be quote unquote, I'm going to use the term babysit, and I use that gently, but I'm wondering if you get any pushback. You know, this is my life and thank you for the help, but...
Yeah, occasionally. I mean, it's not a perfect model. I don't think there is a perfect model, you know, but then maybe that person just isn't ready for what we have to offer right now.
And it's an agreement you make at the beginning.
We make an agreement at the beginning. They sign it, we sign it, and it works.
You've mentioned a couple times 17 floors versus 2, the size of the building. Why?
because you can't, because we set, the community living agreements, that's a control variable. Locking the doors is a control variable. Ensuring that you have staff from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, as we do at Fountain, that's a control variable. Having security from 8 at night until 8 in the morning, and on 24 hours through the weekend, those are control variables. And we're doing the same thing right now. We're getting set to do the same thing at 45 Sherbrooke. We've emptied that building out. But it's really interesting. At Sherbrooke, there were about 60 to 65 people hanging out in the hallways, all young people, all strung out on drugs. I really didn't feel good about the fact that, we've made the building safe now for a new population, but where are all those young people who
Where are the other
are
people
addicted?
going?
Where did they go? Down the street to take over the next building. We're not going to house our way out of this homeless crisis. We need to get to the root cause, and we need to understand that all this big face of homelessness, as diverse as it is a face of addictions and mental health, it's at crisis levels. We need to look at
crisis response.
Yeah, we need that. And we need to build recovery, and we need a youth gang strategy as well. Those are all really young people hanging out using fentanyl in the hallways, the stairwells of Manitoba housing buildings and buildings everywhere.
So we started with the seniors population, and then you've sort of nodded to social housing maybe not also being a solution. Do you think you can ever mix populations of people who are, coming out of homelessness into any population, or is it your belief that it should be these uniform buildings with the full?
Well, I don't think that we should be mixing populations with seniors. I think seniors themselves are vulnerable. People that are living in Manitoba housing are on fixed incomes. I think we need to be more concerned about quality of life for those folks, making sure the buildings are safe, that home care can come in, their families can visit, and so on. So no, I wouldn't be mixing other people with seniors. I do think you can mix populations, but you need to travel people a journey, through a care plan that's set some goals, that, has a bit of vision, where you're going. You've connected people to, services beyond what you can provide yourself, and maybe we even have people to the point where they're willing to consider recovery plans.
What do we do in the meantime now? I mean, we have more than one problem here. We also have people with the skills to be able to deal with these populations.
Yeah.
We're lacking in numbers of those people. I mean, I'm not just thinking about the housing populations in the apartments. I'm even thinking of interviews we've done in healthcare with nurses that are in emergency rooms and working with people, and then they're not skilled to work with this population either, and maybe people are there for shelters, so especially in the winter. I'm wondering right now, I went on a bit of a tangent there, I apologize. I'm wondering right now, if we go back to the housing block, short of evicting people who are causing problems, because that's the way that, housing issues are handled usually, what do you think can be done to make the current situations in these two blocks
Well, I think
better?
that if they're 55 plus buildings, I think that whoever has moved people into the building needs to work with the province to get them out of those buildings as soon as possible and into other housing. Private market housing is always going to be the best approach. Private market housing, maybe the province should consider providing some incentives that, that bring more private market suppliers, online. We've been doing this for 10 years. We have this huge network which is why we house so many people, because we've had to do that because of Moorburg House. We've had to always keep the flow. We've had to build, all that housing to transition from Moorburg House
where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go?
Heal
And
one place
I
and
have
then
to
move on.
keep bringing people in. So we've built a really strong network. So it's a little bit easier, I think, for us than maybe it is for some other groups. But it is private market housing, small populations and small buildings, homes that have been duplexed, and teams that are funded to get in there and do the work. You can't just house people and go away.
Let us know when Sherbrooke opens.
Soon.
Come for a visit.
June.
Thank you, Marion.
Thank you.
June. We'll keep our eye on that building. Marion Willis weighing in, the founder and executive director of St. Boniface Street Links. Now, Manitoba's Housing, Addictions and Homelessness Minister Bernadette Smith says the province is working with social service agencies to house homeless people in various properties, including buildings owned and operated by the nonprofit Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation. That corporation runs the Power Street apartment block. We'll continue to follow through, and you can email Josh Crabb if you have any follow-ups on this story as well. Coming up after 8 o'clock, we're going to hear from a Manitoba MLAs no longer allowed to call each other things, as you heard in the news, like racist, homophobic, or bigoted. We'll hear why the NDP are objecting the new rules. Also, in the next half hour, we'll hear from an education expert about what students with complex needs and their teachers need to succeed in school. This is out of a survey about violence in schools that came out this week. Here's Heather Wells with headlines.
Good morning. Well, today is Red Dress Day in Canada. Métis artist Jamie Black inspired the use of red dresses to represent missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls with an exhibit in 2010. Black displayed more than 100 red dresses in that year around the University of Winnipeg campus to raise awareness. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather. It is -2, light snow in Winnipeg, and in traffic. Call us if you have any updates on what Sierra just mentioned going on out there. 788-3093.
On cue. Riz Ahmed is an award-winning actor known for pushing for more nuanced portrayals of South Asians on screen.
I can't hear you. Do you understand me? I can't. I'm deaf.
He'll be here to talk about reimagining Shakespeare's Hamlet and what it means to take on stories that weren't written with him in mind.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The Alberta separatist group, the Centurion Project, is being investigated by the RCMP and Elections Alberta after millions of voters' private information was made public. We'll talk about what this controversy means ahead of a potential fall referendum coming up on The Current.
Good morning. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce Canada's next Governor-General later this morning. That person will replace Mary Simon, who's been in the role for about 5 years. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, this appointment is to Canada's highest office. What qualifications is Mark Carney looking for?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Canada's Prime Minister, many of his closest ministers and advisors, the opposition leaders, the Speaker, the Chief Justice, and of course the King himself, all men, so installing another woman in the corridors of power at Rideau Hall may be an important counterbalance. Mark Carney earlier this year said that the next Governor-General would absolutely be bilingual, speaking both English and French well, this after years of official complaints and unofficial grumbling about the current vice-regal, Mary Simon, being picked despite not speaking French. But the skills and experiences necessary to inspire Canadians' respect go far beyond questions of identity. The right person must understand deeply the role of the Crown in Canada's constitutional monarchy, its special relationship with Indigenous peoples, its symbols and responsibilities, and in exceptional cases, potential power. This office must be seen as trusted, upholding the nation's best interest. And with potential sovereignty referendums on the horizon in not just one but two provinces, someone capable of speaking with clarity about national unity.
There is a whole process involved in selecting a Governor-General. Can you walk us through that, Janice?
Well, now that we know it's imminent, Mark Carney's audience with King Charles back on March 16th may have been his opportunity to discuss his recommendation in person and in confidence with Canada's sovereign. In the weeks since, Mary Simon's husband has been speaking publicly about the couple's future plans, so it isn't a surprise to see her 5-year tenure ending. That's about average for a term. The Prime Minister's office, though, has not said whether Carney's been working with an advisory committee to evaluate potential candidates. We'll see if we learn more about not only the pick, but the path that led him here as today goes on.
Janice McGregor is in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says Iran is not in control of the Strait of Hormuz. He says the United States is establishing a red, white, and blue dome over the strait. He calls it a gift to the world.
To be clear, this operation is separate and distinct from Operation Epic Fury. Project Freedom is defensive in nature, focused in scope, and temporary in duration, with one mission: protecting innocent commercial shipping from Iranian aggression.
Hegseth says the U.S. blockade remains in effect for Iranian military vessels. He's calling on Iran to let commercial vessels pass freely. For more, let's go to the CBC's Tom Perry in Jerusalem. Tom, what is the state of this ceasefire?
I'd say it's shaky, but so far, for the most part, holding. We saw Iran target the United Arab Emirates yesterday. That was for the first time since this ceasefire began. The UAE says that its air defense is engaged with 19 missiles and drones. We saw a major fire, though, at an oil facility caused by a drone strike. The U.S. went after Iranian fast boats, those small, fast-moving vessels that have been used to attack large freighters and tankers. But that said, the U.S. has not resumed bombing Iran. So as I say, the ceasefire for the most part is holding. We have heard from Iran now. The Speaker of the country's parliament posted a message on social media saying that the security of shipping and energy transit has been jeopardized by the U.S. and its allies. We've heard from Iran's foreign minister warning the U.S. and the UAE not to get dragged into what he calls a quagmire. And we heard from Donald Trump, who went on Fox News and said that Iran would be blown off the face of the earth. That's Donald Trump talking, if they targeted U.S. ships. Again, though, that hasn't happened yet. So for the most part, the ceasefire is holding despite what we've been seeing happening.
And the conflict in Lebanon has not abated. Israel is targeting Hezbollah. Can you tell us the latest on that front?
Yeah, the Israel Defense Forces have told people in 2 more towns in southern Lebanon to evacuate because they're going to be going after Hezbollah. The Lebanese Health Ministry says that 17 people were killed in Israeli strikes yesterday alone. So people are still dying. Keep in mind, it's Lebanon and Israel that have agreed to a ceasefire, but Israel, of course, has been fighting Hezbollah, and they didn't sign on to this deal. And so while there is a ceasefire, Israel is still keeping up its attacks against what it calls Hezbollah targets.
The CBC's Tom Perry in Jerusalem. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
The World Health Organization says it is possible Hanta virus is being transmitted from human to human on board the Dutch cruise ship off the coast of Cape Verde. But Maria von Kerkhove says the situation is stabilizing.
At this stage, there are no additional symptomatic people on board. That said, the situation is being closely monitored, and as a precaution, passengers have been asked to remain in their cabins while disinfection and other public health measures are carried out.
Van Kerkhove says officials are focused now on medically evacuating 2 people to the Netherlands. There are 5 other confirmed or suspected cases of hantavirus. 3 people have died. 1 person remains in intensive care in South Africa. Another is showing only mild symptoms. An Ontario judge is expected to rule shortly on the case of a 12-year-old boy who died in the child welfare system. A couple is accused of first-degree murder in the death of the child who had been placed in their care. They're also accused of torturing and confining the boy's younger brother. The CBC's Jamie Strachan has more. A warning, some of these details may be disturbing to our listeners.
According to the Crown Attorney, 46-year-old Becky Hamber and her wife, 44-year-old Brandy Cooney, hated the 2 Indigenous boys they planned to adopt, allegedly torturing them, restricting access to food, and keeping them locked up for hours at a time, often wearing wetsuits zip-tied to their bodies. Erwin Ellman is Ontario's former child advocate.
How could this happen?
He says in this case, like other tragic cases of children dying while in care, there were warning signs. The court heard about numerous occasions when teachers, police, and doctors voiced concerns about the boys' treatment, but they both remained in the home.
In terms of power and control, power of the Children's Aid Society to say, we know best, nothing to see here, you don't understand our work, you don't understand our children.
In 2017, the brothers known as LL and JL were moved from a foster home in the Ottawa area to the couple's Burlington, Ontario home. 5 years later, according to testimony, 12-year-old LL died alone in the basement, where he'd been locked up for hours. Cindy Blackstock, a longtime First Nations child advocate, says safeguards were clearly ignored.
It's just a horrendous outcome for, of course, the little boy who passed, but also for his brother.
Attorneys for the accused say the women did the best they could with the children, who one lawyer described as broken, prone to violent outbursts and self-harm. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
The Speaker of Manitoba's legislature is reining in what he considers bad behavior in the chamber. Tom Lindsay says MLAs are making disrespectful comments and often yelling at each other. As Karen Pauls reports, he's hoping the new rules will improve decorum.
Start a trend towards civility and respect.
Speaker Tom Lindsay opened the legislative session with that plea, but it didn't help. Here, a Conservative MLA tells Premier Wab Kinew,
quit drinking, Wab.
Last month, Conservative opposition leader Abi Khan was reprimanded for telling the health minister, who's the first black, queer, gender non-conforming MLA, quote, "You're a terrible person, whatever you are."
Order, please. Order!
Lindsay says it has to stop.
I hope members will reflect on what the youth of Manitoba are learning from the behavior they witness in this House, and I would ask members to consider if they want this to be their legacy.
So, new rules. If MLAs get 4 warnings for heckling, they won't be allowed to speak in the session. And he's adding these to the list of unparliamentary words.
Bigot, homophobe, misogynist, racist, transphobe.
Conservative leader Khan commends Lindsay for taking this stand.
And that this language is always hurled from the government to our side. We're not the ones using these 5 words against them.
But Kinew has a different take.
Well, when something's racist, you got to call it out.
Paul Thomas hopes this will improve decorum in the legislature. He's a political scientist at the University of Manitoba.
We're already living in an era of deep mistrust of politicians, but the politicians bring it on themselves based on the behavior we've seen recently in the Manitoba legislature.
Thomas says change has to start at the top with the leaders. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Welcome to the show. You're on CBC, and if you're continuing with us, thanks for being here. On Tuesday, May 5th, this is Information Radio on 89.3. You also might be on 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. This half hour on the program, this week we heard from a survey that there are problems in some of our classrooms in this province. The Manitoba Teachers Society says educators in Manitoba are dealing with bigger and more complex classrooms. This half hour we'll talk to an education expert about why she's worried this could be a recipe for burnout. We're going to hear more about what is happening specifically with students with complex needs, which was part of what that survey was about. So stay tuned. That conversation straight ahead. Also, you just heard it on World Report. The whole country is hearing about the lack of decorum in our Manitoba legislature. We've covered that story on the news throughout the morning. This half hour, we're going to hear more from the House Speaker, also from the House NDP leader, and from a longtime political commentator. Heather Wells is in with other headlines.
Good morning. Well, a 23-year-old man faces sexual assault, luring, and other charges after Winnipeg police say they received information a sexual assault occurred between an adult pastor who directed a youth camp group. We'll hear more about that as well. Some rural communities are making waves over proposed changes to the Drinking Water Safety Act. The changes would potentially require most wells with at least 15 connections to be chlorinated at the owner's expense. We'll hear about the impact coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
All right, let's go to Abby with the weather.
Yeah, Marcy, we're expecting a cloudy day with light snow towards the northern part of the province and breezy flurries across the south as this unseasonably cool air really lingers across the province. For Winnipeg right now, we're looking at temperatures still stuck at -2, cloudy skies outside. We saw the sun peek through earlier, but it's now cloudy again. We're going to notice the gusty northwest winds. We're aiming for a high of 3 degrees later today, with that slim chance of flurries still persisting through the afternoon and even into the evening period. The winds will really make things feel a bit cooler than the actual temperature, so be prepared for that. Similar conditions across the south and up north. We're seeing light snow in most of the areas, more like a uniform chill. Temperatures between -4s and -10s. Highs will struggle to break that freezing mark for the northern region, while down south, most of the regions will warm up close to 4 degrees. But for the city of Winnipeg, we're expecting a high of 3 degrees today. We're at -2 right now.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's go to Sierra Sanders now. She's got some news and traffic.
I do. Good morning, Marcy. I been, when the last traffic hit, I had mentioned about the South Perimeter. There was a situation going on there. So the South Perimeter heading east between Pembina and St. Mary's there was a 2-car accident there. And that accident happened to be in the left lane there, so that median lane, just as you were crossing that bridge over the Red River there. I just gotten an update or got a call from Lindsay who gave me an update. There are emergency vehicles on scene tending to that situation, trying to help clear everything out of the way so traffic can start moving. But it is very backed up there. I took a quick look at that live Google traffic map, and it is looking dark red, which means slow. And I had also gotten a call from Richard before, just giving caution that that bridge as well, that bridge over the Red River is icy. So you want to adjust your driving conditions and expect delays there on that eastbound South Perimeter due to that 2-car accident that we've been talking about. So keep an eye on that situation and hear if there are any updates. But there are emergency vehicles on scene, making sure that it is cleared and working to get that situation underway there as well. I know I had mentioned about a stalled vehicle northbound Keniston at Sterling Lyon there, just at the underpass before Taylor. That situation has been cleared, so you don't need to worry about that. I know that was a little while ago, but I figured I would give a quick little update about that. That's been cleared, so no need to worry about that. Still a little bit of time left in the show, so you can give me a call if there's anything getting in your way. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, we're going to take you into Manitoba schools next. Classrooms are getting bigger in this province. A growing number of kids also need extra support. That is the conclusion from a new survey by the Manitoba Teachers Society. Now, it was sent to nearly the Society's 17,000 members, and just over 3,300 responded. Of those surveyed, 80% said classes are getting more complex. 3/4 said students are not getting the support that they need. That's critical. Nearly half of the educators surveyed also reported having more than 6 students with complex needs in their classrooms. Leslie Ebley-Trudel is with us to discuss the numbers and the realities. She's an associate professor of education over at the University of Winnipeg, but she's also a former teacher herself. She has over 30 years experience as an educator and a school administrator. We're grateful to have you on with your perspective. Thank you for being here.
Wonderful to be here this morning, Marcy. Thank you for having me.
I understand you said you no surprise in this survey for you. From your experience, what are some of the factors you think could be contributing to students having more complex needs, or is that number of 6 per classroom, as I mentioned, not new?
No surprise for me. I think the most concerning thing here is that we want to do our very best to attract and retain teachers in the profession. And the Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation has said that there is going to be a massive teacher shortage by year 2030. That's not far away. And so this is very concerning data for us. We know that teaching has traditionally been a stressful profession. That is not new. But definitely the pandemic exposed some of the realities of schools, the challenges in schools. We know that social media has increased misinformation and disinformation. We just heard that on the news. There's certainly distraction with devices. We've got students experiencing sleep deprivation, cyberbullying, harassment. We have experienced economic challenges, fiscal challenges, disproportionate impact on low income and racialized households.
So you're going through a lot of information there. I just want to interject. Yeah. Is this are you listing all of those things because you believe that those are factors that might be contributing to more students having more complex needs?
Absolutely. And as the Manitoba Teachers Society report indicated, you've got an increase in trauma, and we're noticing an increase in student behavior in the classroom and mental health and well-being challenges as well. So those are all factors that I see that have changed some of the dynamics in the classroom, although as I did initially say, teaching has traditionally been seen as a stressful profession.
I'm wondering whether or not teachers receive enough training to work with kids who have additional needs, because every time we do interviews about it, we actually look at the number of resource teachers, right? We look at the number of teachers that are trained specifically, the specialists in the schools. But if you have that many kids in the classroom, is part of the solution giving better training to teachers to deal with complex needs, or what are your thoughts on solutions?
Well, teachers certainly do receive training within their teacher education programs, but I think I would echo what you've said, that teachers often feel that that's not enough. There's also other barriers like inadequate funding. There's certainly inaccessible buildings that we can see in our school divisions. And there's also negative attitudes and values in society. And certainly, as you cited, teachers do need more preparation, but they're not in the classroom alone. And that's something that I always emphasize to pre-service teachers, that there are a team of people that are working with them in the classroom. So you've got your educational assistants, and I think we heard Lillian Clausen talk about the need for more educational assistants in the classroom.
Is that just to interject, is that where you put the funding to more EAs?
I think educational assistants are an important component in the educational support process, but I would also add additional teachers to classrooms. Certainly, we've heard about co-teaching models. We've heard about the inclusion of resource and learning support teachers in classrooms. And certainly the idea of assistive technology supports can be helpful in the classroom as well.
I wonder with the number, like I'm just still on that number of 6 as an average, at least according to this survey. And this is going to be controversial, and I respect that, and I understand how big of a question this is and a comment this is. But at what point is there are we at a threshold or a tipping point where we have to start having conversations about how to better support not just teachers, but the kids in getting what they need? And could part of that be, once again, separating the kids? Inclusion has been a value in this province of having inclusive classrooms, and I know why that happened. But I'm just wondering, with the number of these kids and the lack of people that we have in the system to teach and to do the resource with them, is that the only option that maybe we have left in this province?
Well, we have to remember that inclusion is the law, right? And this legislation came into play in Manitoba probably late in terms of the whole Canadian perspective, 2005, in fact. So we've been doing this for 21 years. And I would hope that eventually we can get better at what we're doing to prepare teachers better for this and to work as team members in classrooms so that we can make the classroom better for all students. And that's important because we want to prepare students to live in a diverse world. We want to prepare them and promote long-term success. And we know that inclusion is the model that does that. And we've really moved from a model where we're trying to change individual students to moving to a model where we're trying to change the environment. And so teachers using models such as universal design for learning, differentiated instruction, having that team support in the classroom is going to help. But as I've said, we've been at this for many, many years, and it seems like we still can't get this right.
We talked about the training for teachers at the different educational facilities. Of course, we have U of M and Brandon here in Manitoba that train teachers. Has there been a change in how much education you get at that level in university to be able to teach successfully kids who have complex needs?
Well, certainly with the regulation changes, we are looking at changing our teacher preparation program. Traditionally, teachers receive 6 credit hours of training in this area. But we also have to remember that with the model of inclusion...
Can I stop you there for a moment? Did you say 6 credit hours? Is that in their whole 4 years?
Yes,
That's all that
but
they would get for complex needs?
Specifically, however, the next point I was going to make was that within every course, there has to be discussion about how you do this in the language arts classroom, how you include students in the mathematics classroom. So it's certainly a larger conversation across every curricular area than just the specific 6 credit hours of training. Yes.
Got it. What kind of support do you think that the teachers need in the meantime in the classrooms when we're talking about all this? It's a complicated topic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as I said before, I have been in an experience where I've been a co-teacher personally working in the classroom along with another teacher. I believe that clinician support can be really effective in the classroom. As an administrator, I supported having speech language pathologists in early years classrooms to help with the reading process, having school psychologists in classrooms to help where there are students with learning difficulties. And as I mentioned before, the assistive technology supports can really equalize the playing field for a lot of students in the regular classrooms.
Really appreciate your time on this, Leslie, as we work through making things better for everyone involved. Thank you so much for your expertise.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Live on Zoom with us today, Leslie Ebby-Trudel, who's an Associate Professor of Education at the University of Winnipeg. We'll have ongoing coverage of this if you're a teacher and you want to weigh in, 788-3205. Well, next, let's get a little more on the story that you've been hearing, Heather, and with the news on the news this morning about Tom Lindsay saying that things need to change to restore civility in order to question period. The Speaker of the Manitoba Legislature, an elected NDP MLA, says decorum's at an all-time low. Members are shouting and hurling insults. He's hearing from the public, Lindsay says, and school groups that they're sick of it. Yesterday, he introduced these new rules about how MLAs conduct themselves in the House.
1. If any member engages in excessive, inappropriate, or loud heckling, I will call the member to order. If the member continues to heckle in that manner, and I need to call them to order more than 3 times, I will advise the member that I will not be recognizing them to speak in debate for the remainder of the sitting day. If the member continues to heckle in the same manner following that intervention, I will advise them that they have disregarded the authority of the chair, and in accordance with Rule 18, I will name the member and ask them to leave the chamber. If any of the following words are used in debate from one member to another, they will be ruled unparliamentary, and I will order them withdrawn. Bigot, homophobe, misogynist, racist, transphobe. The fact that these words are now unparliamentary does not allow members to use language that could be interpreted as bigoted, homophobic, misogynist, racist, transphobic, or offensive in nature. I will be listening very closely to language used on the record to ensure that all members are being respectful and not being offensive or disorderly in their comments.
Many NDP members did not clap at the end of that speech. NDP House Leader Nahanni Fontaine explained why to reporters after question period.
I haven't been accused of using those words. I have used those words in the chamber. Let's be clear. My concerns are for the safety of my colleagues in the chamber. I don't say those words willy-nilly just because I feel like saying those words. If I call individuals in the chamber those words, it's because they were either being racist or misogynistic or transphobic or anti-Black or anti-Indigenous. I don't just make up these scenarios just so that I can say those words in the chamber. And so what I'm concerned about is that we now have a new regime in the chamber that is more concerned with words and people's feelings being hurt by their own behaviors rather than the safety of my BIPOC colleagues. That's what I'm concerned about. And so this new regime has established that we're more concerned with people's feelings than we are with the safety and humanity of members of the NDP caucus. And let me be explicitly clear, I am only specifically talking about the NDP caucus because we are the only caucus with a trans man. We are the only caucus with Indigenous women. We are the only caucus with a Black man. We are the only caucus with Sikh members. We are the only caucus with Asian Canadian members. We are the only caucus, not only in Manitoba, but across the country, with a Black, queer, gender non-conforming member.
That's NDP House Leader Nahanni Fontaine. Now, Paul Thomas has the last minute on our program to talk about this. He's a longtime Manitoba political commentator and professor emeritus.
I think we have to have a deep cultural change, and that's not easy to bring about. And it's a kind of, every time this happens, it reinforces norms of behavior and behavioral tactics that are not inspiring, they're depressing. And anybody watching this gets cynical about the legislative process. And this is supposed to be the citadel of democracy. So I heard the speaker say today, 3 strikes and you're out. You heckle 3 times and I recognize you and name you, then you're gone from the chamber for the remainder of the day. That's one device that he can use. Another device I've suggested on other times is if you continue to play with these insulting tactics, you just wouldn't be recognized in question period. And that would be a real setback for some people who the only time they're ever going to get on camera and be noticed is if they do one of these high profile questions.
Paul Thomas, longtime Manitoba political commentator and professor emeritus, speaking with CBC's Karen Pauls in a longer interview. We'll have ongoing coverage in the news throughout the day of this story. It is a lot to think about when you think about the climate at the legislature, and also when you think about what's happening in the world and the use of these words. And if you want to weigh in on this and what your thoughts are on it, having heard the different perspectives, 788-3205. I want to thank the people in advance of the news here who worked in the program today. From our news department, Heather Wells, Joni Niccolo, Megan Ketchison, Darren Bernhardt on the web. Our live team, Abby Adiyemi, Darren Marash, Sierra Sanders. Our producers, Leif Larson, the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. The show's producer is Nellie Gonzalez. Thank you, guys. And the associate producers with work in today's program, Sarah Krimilowski, Sophia Peralta-Barone, and Kaylin Monkman. So big thanks to everybody who works on the show. It is lightly snowing. That continues here in Winnipeg. Not quite as much, I don't think, as earlier this morning, but we do have that chance with us throughout the morning. Mostly cloudy now in most parts of the city, including downtown. It's -1 right now in Winnipeg. -1's actually the warm spot in the province today, so no one else is getting it better. The cold spot is -10 into Dooley Lake, and right now over in Brandon, it's also snowing, and it is -1. Your CBC News from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is -1, and we are about 14 degrees colder than normal when it comes to the high temperature today. The normal high is 17. Today, a high of 3, and that wind continuing to be strong from the northwest. A 23-year-old man faces sexual assault, luring, and other charges after police say they received information a sexual assault had occurred between an adult pastor who directed a youth camp group. Winnipeg police say between August 2025 and March 2026, the pastor forged a relationship by grooming and gaining the trust of a youth camp counselor. The counselor was a teen at the time. Police say the survivor met with the accused in private on multiple occasions and received sexual explicit material sent by the accused. The accused has been released from custody under authorized conditions. Manitoba's education minister says her government is doing what it can to help schools and teachers. A new survey from the Manitoba Teachers Society highlights educators' concerns. It found 81% of those who responded say class size, complexity, and lack of supports are their main concerns. Respondents also report having less educational assistance support and feeling students are not getting the supports they need. The Society is calling for additional funding to address class size and to hire more staff. Education Minister Tracy Schmidt says the NDP is working on it.
It's under our government that since we've been elected, every single year, every single school division has received an increase. So it's going to take a while for us to dig out of the hole that the Tories left us with in education.
Schmidt says the government has already made progress and she looks forward to the year ahead. Some rural communities are making waves over proposed changes to the Drinking Water Safety Act. The changes would potentially require most wells with at least 15 connections to be chlorinated. And the owner foots the bill. The move would have a big impact on Hutterite colonies. The Pineland colony in southeast Manitoba has 107 people using a single well. That colony now has 11 months to chlorinate, build more wells, or face a fine. Titus Gross is from Pineland.
We feel it's overreach. We've never failed a test, so therefore, why chlorinate it?
Gross says he has met with other concerned colonies. The opposition PCs have delayed the bill amendments until the fall session of the Manitoba legislature. A longtime political studies expert says he has never seen such vitriol at the Manitoba legislature.
Order, please. Order!
Speaker Tom Lindsay has added 5 words to the list of unparliamentary terms, including bigot, homophobe, and racist. He also pledges to crack down on heckling. University of Manitoba Professor Emeritus Paul Thomas says the new rules instituted by the speaker show how bad it's become.
This was deep frustration, and he was just groping to find some procedural mechanism to rein in members, to let them have them be more civil towards one another, to have them display more decorum.
Thomas says all 57 MLAs feel like they're entitled to shout at each other, and some utter physical threats. He says it all starts with the two-party leaders, Wab Kinew and Abi Khan, who need to find ways, he says, to show more respect, even if they don't like each other. Indigenous students at the University of Manitoba are hosting Red Dress Day events to remember missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQ+ people. Red dresses will be placed inside and outside the Indigenous Student Centre. Carla Lowen at the Indigenous Student Centre says it's a time to recognize and remember voices that have been lost.
And it's also an opportunity for individuals to pause and reflect. I know students who've been affected by violence against Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people. And so it's important for them to be seen and heard.
Lowen says she has noticed a change in attitude towards the missing and murdered. She says it used to be considered strictly an Indigenous issue, but she believes now members of the wider community want to learn and be more respectful. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce the name of Canada's next Governor-General in about 1 hour from now. During a French interview last month with Radio-Canada, Carney declared the next person to fill the role will be bilingual in English and French.
Absolument. Absolument.
Sources tell CBC the next Governor-General will be a woman. Mary Simon is nearing the end of 5 years in that job. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, part of what we looked to the feds for within the last week was the fiscal update, right? The spring economic update that came out last week. One of the top lines was the trades, needing more people in the trades. And yesterday it was interesting. The federal minister was here and talking about the fact that the attitudes have changed, as he put it, toward the trades from back in the day. So that's actually part of the call-in today. Wondering whether or not and how you think about your attitude has changed towards the trades education, or whether or not it has or hasn't. And there's been a shift. So trades, academia, how do you view both? And knowing what you know about the trades and the employment opportunities and the pay scales and such, would you go back and make a different decision if you did choose academia, for example? So attitudes towards the trades coming up today on the noon call-in. If you have a story to share with Marjorie Dalhouse, who hosts between 12:30 and 1 is when you call. Here is Sarah Sanders with the last look at traffic.
Hi, Marcy. Still hearing about that accident on the South Perimeter heading eastbound there. I got a call from Georgia for a little update. He said the eastbound lanes are completely blocked by a fire truck, and they're actually rerouting folks. So keep that in mind there if you are heading on the South Perimeter heading east today.
All right. Thanks, Sarah, for the morning. Abby.
A cool and cloudy day across the province. Scattered light snow and breezy conditions will surely move across nearly every corner of the province. We're looking at highs going close to 3 degrees and 4 degrees down south, while up north, most of the regions will struggle to get to 1 today.
Boo! All right, well, do it together. We'll be in warmer days soon, Manitoba. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, everyone, for listening this morning. And we'll be back again tomorrow with another new edition on CBC Information Radio. Hope you join us then.